Hello, everyone. Hello, dear UAF audience. We welcome you on our first online marathon. Today, we'll have a broad discussion and interesting insight on European Union and Ukraine aviation, about airports, airline, and operation under COVID restrictions. We will also go into the aviation industry analytics and try to understand what is ahead of us. And the current stream will be subtitled in Ukraine on our YouTube channel. Want to remind you to submit your questions to the speakers in our Telegram channel. And during the end of every presentation, speaker will try to answer all your questions. So without any further delays, I would like to invite our first speaker, is Simon Bundle. He is the Vice President for Production and International Affairs from Ukraine International Airline. So Simon, do you hear us?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Simon, so we are already on the air, so the floor is yours. We invite you to give us the presentation about Ukraine International Airline. So go ahead.
Okay, I hope you're able to see the presentation now.
We're waiting for that. No, we still can't see it.
All right, just 1 second.
Okay, take your time.
Right, what I need to, because I've got the presentation here, it's just it doesn't want to showing on my screen but not yours.
Yeah, you have to share your screen from in the Zoom.
Is that better?
No, still no sign of it.
Strange. Okay, just 1 second.
No worries. I will try to assist you a little bit. And
It says now I'm screen sharing. Sorry for this.
Yep, we are on.
We are. Okay, wonderful, good. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you, the Ukraine Aviation Forum, for inviting me to speak today.
You're welcome.
This industry faces challenges never faced before. In all the years that I've been working in aviation, I have never seen so many people whose lives have been affected. 2020 is a year all of us will never forget. As the airline industry starts to emerge from lockdown, quarantine, and closed borders, people again dream to travel, but there is a nervousness in the air. People seek that confidence and comfort factor that this industry has done and continues to do all possible to reduce any exposure to COVID-19 virus and to create a passenger-friendly experience. Airlines and airports have been working 24/7 to make this happen. We at Ukraine International Airlines, we want you to fly healthy. Effectively, prior to operating flights and starting up our operation, we have done individual assessments of risk under the guidance approved by IATA and the recommendations, restrictions of authorized state bodies of Ukraine and the destination country. UAE is also fully compliant with mandatory personal protection equipment, PPE, at the airport and on board, and enhanced security measures after all. We want to ensure the maximum protection, safety, and health of passengers and staff. So what should passengers expect? Before your flight, again, it's something that deals all of us, the fact that it's compulsory to wear personal protective masks, maintain social distancing, and we encourage online check-in for our flights and also to download and print your boarding pass. One of the main reasons for this is that now at Borispol, at Terminal D, only passengers traveling may enter the terminal, and they want to see your boarding pass or e-ticket when you enter. We recommend extra time be allowed to clear all formalities, baggage drop-off, security, immigration, etc. You will, of course, have checked out the travel recommendations for the destination country. More importantly, refrain from traveling if you have symptoms of illness. At the airport, well, here the experience begins because as you enter, there's the temperature and health screening. So you will have your temperature taken. You will see that all passengers and staff are wearing protective equipment. Hygiene stations with hand sanitizers are everywhere. The lounges and the duty-free shops are open. The airport does regular thorough disinfection of all surfaces. And when it comes to boarding your flight, we do contactless boarding, which is controlled by row. On boarding our aircraft, there is temperature and health screening. So again, your temperature is taken as you board the aircraft. Our aircraft have deep cleaning before every flight, and they are also disinfected each day. The aircraft have the HEPA filters, which completely replace cabin air every 2 to 3 minutes. On board, all staff must wear their protective masks. Our cabin crew are equipped for your safety. And also, once you've had your seat assignment and you've boarded, we do not permit you to change your seating. We ask passengers to refrain from queuing when it's required to use the bathrooms. And the availability of onboard services is limited because of the current conditions, and payment where applicable is contactless only. On some routes, because of government restrictions, namely Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, we have very much restricted hand baggage allowance. On arrival at your destination, we again do contactless disembarkation, and this is controlled by row. There's information about this on our website, flyua.com, and there's also some video clips which take you through the process. Looking at route development under COVID-19, I think it's fair to say that all airlines are emerging slimmer and hopefully more streamlined than when they entered. UAE is no different. We entered this shutdown, lockdown, with a fleet of 35 aircraft. We're emerging, initially operating 14 aircraft, and we plan to increase this up to 28 aircraft by spring and during spring 2021. So if you take a look at 2020, the second quarter, we were focusing on repatriation, evacuation, and cargo flights. Plus, in late June, there was some reinstatement of some domestic flights. During the third quarter, again, in addition to the repatriation, evacuation, and cargo flights, we started to reinstate our scheduled operation with a minimal operation in July. And then for August and September, we have planned to increase frequencies and destinations for both domestic and international. And here you can see that in August, we have the destinations for domestic. They've been increased by additional destinations in September, and likewise for August and September in international. Already, we've had to adjust and put back some of the start of our flights because of the restrictions that are currently imposed. For example, Ukraine citizens may still not enter the EU, and that obviously has some effect on our operation as well. Turning to the fourth quarter, the plans are not finalized yet. We're working on it. We obviously have the cargo flights are set up, but we are trying to understand how we can move forward, what restrictions are being eased, when and where. Likewise, when it comes to restrictions and requirements to enter destination countries, I think adaptability is a word that comes to mind, reacting to sudden changes. And I can give you an example. Only last weekend in the United Kingdom, the government gave 5 hours notice of a change that affected some 60,000 holidaymakers in Spain. They had 5 hours to get back or face quarantine for 14 days. We have a small team here who do daily checks on restrictions and requirements to enter destination countries using the key sources of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Health, Border Control, and embassies. To support this, we also have conference calls and seminars. Recently, we set up a seminar with the Canada Border Services Agency. We fly to Toronto, and it's very important with all the new rules and regulations that we are fully up to date on this. And we actually had a very good training seminar where we were able to answer and have questions answered as well. Likewise, just last week, the Gulf Civil Aviation and Airports of Emirates had a conference call where they invited all airlines who fly to the Emirates to participate. And again, they had recently introduced a lot of regulations, and airlines had the opportunity to ask questions, get answers, and it was, again, a very productive couple of hours that we spent for this. When it comes to travel recommendations, I think it goes without saying that because of all these changes at short notice, the ongoing restrictions, the temporary suspension of visas, etc., it's necessary for passengers to find out about the current restrictions and the requirements for the destination country. And we encourage them to do this prior to making their reservation. There are obviously recommendations that we also make. One is that you visit the IATA website for the latest entry requirements of the destination you're traveling to, and also the Ministry of Health of Ukraine website. So passengers can know from which countries are required to be quarantined on arrival in Ukraine, whether it's in a red zone or green zone. And obviously this is then updated on a regular basis. So it comes back to the last one page of the presentation and a key question. 2021, what will it bring? Well, first of all, I think we would all agree that we would hope that some form of normality comes back into our lives. 2021 very much will depend on what we face during the coming autumn and winter. Will there be a second wave? Will there not? For certain, there will be challenges. But then again, we face these each year, albeit of a different nature. So that's something that's not uncommon for us. Looking for uniformity, and again, this is something that we seek, especially from governments. We would like that governments would agree on a uniform testing of passengers instead of maybe a quarantine, maybe not. And I know IATA supports this, and we very much support IATA, and I believe other airlines do so as well. Thank you very much. And I hope I kept within my time.
Yes, Simon, you are just on time. Thank you very much for your presentation. And of course, we have a couple of questions from the audience. So, Simon, how do you see the effective long-term state support for the aviation industry?
What support?
State support.
Yeah, what support? Next question.
Well, I think it's financial support, or maybe like regulations, like let's say in general.
Me personally, I'm not aware of such support. Obviously, we are in contact with the authorities with regards to the restrictions and everything. But I think the support that other governments have been giving other airlines in other countries, that doesn't happen here.
Okay. Next question, Simon. What is your personal opinion? Is there any space for Ukraine aircraft manufacturer, let's say, to be introduced in Ukraine International Airline? I mean, will Ukraine International Airline will use the locally produced aircraft in their fleet, or you will still be the Boeing and Airbus?
We have to date. I've been with the airline for 26 years. When I first started, we were a Boeing operator. We always have been a Boeing operator. And it's only that whilst looking to replace an alternative to the 737-500s that we are operating the Embraer, the 190, 195 aircraft. Some years back, we used to operate the Antonov aircraft, the 148. The problem we faced was that without it having, in those days, EASA approval, we couldn't operate it to many countries. And likewise, those airlines who we code share with, they would not place their code on us. So I think at this moment in time, we try to keep a uniform fleet of aircraft, namely the Boeing 737NG, and Embraer aircraft, and obviously wide-body Boeing aircraft for our long-haul routes.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Simon, could you please mention or just describe the financial strength of Ukraine International Airline, and could you mention at least some measures that Ukraine International Airline is undertaking to secure the cash flow and to minimize operational costs?
Well, first of all, we again, since the time that I've been with the airline, we've always been a company that watches costs. We've always been reviewing costs ever since I've been here, and I think that's something that's been happening with airlines over the last couple of decades. We have obviously very strong support from our shareholders, and that's why, to this effect, we're emerging, like most airlines, we're emerging a lot slimmer and streamlined than what we were when we entered. As I say, we had 35 fleet of aircraft when everything started to shut down, and now we're just emerging with 14 aircraft, whereby we have not immediately started flying everywhere, because we need to understand, is there traffic? You see many airlines currently now losing millions and millions of dollars. we are cautious. We understand that we will grow as the market grows and as the countries will open up. And as I say, you know, when you see some carriers that would possibly operating up to 6 flights a day have started with 2 flights a week. Or you see that some carriers have decided they won't start until October. Or the fact that some carriers even stopped operating last winter and only started this summer and again doing 2 flights a week. So we have done the risk assessment. We look at the routes. We look to see where the flow of traffic. We look to see the accessibility to the destination country. And based on that, our network development, again with you know, other teams within the airline, have taken the necessary steps, and we have produced a schedule which we believe is the right one to move forward, albeit we've had to cut back and make changes because what we thought was going to happen didn't, in the sense of the restrictions.
I see. I see. Simon, thank you very much for your time and the information that you provided. Thank you very much. So I really hope that that this is not the last time we are here, and hopefully to see you again in our conferences.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you.
Андрей.
Да, да. Георгий, вы нас слышите?
Слышу вас хорошо. Здравствуйте, Андрей.
Добрый день. Георгий, тогда, может быть, пару слов о себе, чтобы аудитория имела представление, чем вы занимаетесь.
Прежде всего, спасибо за приглашение, Андрей. Хочу поблагодарить всех организаторов. Это, я думаю, непростая дискуссия в период тех обстоятельств, в которых сейчас находится вся наша авиационная отрасль. И, конечно же, я приветствую всех участников этого онлайн-марафона. Спасибо вам. Меня зовут Георгий Зубко. Если сокращенно, то я являюсь коммерческим директором аэропорта Борисполь уже практически 4 года. Вот. И, к сожалению, та тема, которая сейчас стоит в основе всего, да, пандемия, которая, к сожалению, коснулась нас всех, наверное. И особенно, к сожалению, авиацию и туризм. Думаю, еще никогда за всю историю существования авиации не было такой масштабной паузы с настолько большими потерями. При всем моем личном жизненном оптимизме я осознаю, что по всей Европе это, наверное, одна из самых больших проблем ожидаемых — безработица. И мы видим более 6 миллионов рабочих мест в авиационной отрасли, которые в данный момент находятся под угрозой. В Украине финансовые показатели потерь авиакомпаний, согласно данным ИАТА, это порядка 1,3 миллиарда долларов и более 80 тысяч рабочих мест, если говорить про авиацию и смежные области. Вот. В общем, влияние на ВВП страны будет около миллиарда долларов со знаком минус. Аэропорт Борисполь в этом отношении не является, к сожалению, исключением. Вот. И мы недополучаем примерно 300 миллионов гривен ежемесячно. Прямых убытков мы имеем где-то 130-150 миллионов гривен ежемесячно. Поэтому, к большому сожалению, большое количество инфраструктурных проектов, которые мы развиваем очень активно последние годы, нам в данный момент пришлось отложить. Мы видим, что ситуация с кризисом в мировой авиации достаточно затяжная. Я приведу несколько цифр, вот, для того, чтобы было понятно, да, согласно, опять же, ссылаясь на данные ИАТА, вот, что мы ожидаем, да, и какие тенденции у нас впереди. В конце марта аналитика говорила, что восстановить прежние объемы можно будет к концу 2020 года. Но сейчас прогнозы говорят, что полное восстановление произойдет не ранее, чем в 2024 году. Хотя еще совсем недавно прогноз был 2023 год. То есть самое печальное в этой истории, что тенденция является отрицательной. Самое, наверное, важное для авиации, да, это пассажирские и грузовые перевозки, вот, которые прямо влияют на туризм и экономику страны. Состояние на конец мая больше всего пострадал рынок международных перевозок. Если внутренние перевозки еще имеют положительную тенденцию, то с международными становится с каждым месяцем хуже, даже несмотря на открытие границ. Я объясню, что имею в виду. Пассажиры не готовы возвращаться к авиаперелетам. То есть еще в апреле 61% летающих был готов вернуться к перелету, а 36% были готовы полететь не раньше, чем через полгода и до 2 лет. Сейчас же только 45% готовы вернуться к полетам до 6 месяцев. И только 17% готовы летать, зная, что будут проходить обсервацию. Существует 2 основные причины такой отрицательной тенденции. Прежде всего, это боязнь заболеть. И более масштабная вторая проблема – это регулярная смена правил пребывания и карантина в странах. То есть отрицательная динамика доверия пассажиров к безопасности авиаперелетов – это самое худшее, что есть с точки зрения возобновления туризма. Поэтому для решения данной проблемы надо, чтобы предпринимали действия не только авиакомпании. Это должна быть единая государственная политика восстановления доверия к авиационным перевозкам, возвращение доверия к авиаперевозкам и создание определенных стимулов, чтобы пассажиры все-таки возвращались к полетам. Европа уже начала это делать. Некоторые страны придумывают различные, назовем их, плюшки в виде покрытия затрат на лечение в случае заражения, или частичная компенсация на проживание в отелях, еще что-то. И это подчеркивает на необходимости либерализации существующих ограничений для снижения негативного эффекта. Государства видят, что такая непредсказуемая политика по поводу карантинных мер может привести к тому, что все пойдет по максимально пессимистическому сценарию, затянет процесс возвращения к кризисным объемам на год. Что касается, несколько слов, наверное, еще мне бы хотелось сказать про грузоперевозки. Вот, с одной стороны, они выросли, с другой стороны, если брать общий рынок, то объем грузов, к сожалению, тоже уменьшился. Так как раньше большое количество перевозили именно в багажных отделениях пассажирских самолетов. Скачкообразную динамику роста прошлого квартала продемонстрировал разве что сегмент медицинских грузов, но это скорее ожидаемо. Что касается будущего развития аэропортов, то пока, к сожалению, мы не можем сказать четкие прогнозы. Как быстро будут восстанавливаться пассажиропоток, авиакомпании и прочее. Мы зависим от, наш главный у аэропортов клиент, это все-таки авиакомпания, и поэтому мы с таким трепетом и тревогой говорим о том, что им будет крайне сложно выбираться из этих обстоятельств самостоятельно. И только помощь государства должна обеспечить стабильный, планомерный, системный путь выхода из этой ситуации. Динамика будет очень сильно зависеть от ограничений, которые будут действовать для украинского пассажира. Во многих странах государство поддерживает отрасль, это много упрощает. У нас пока нет никакой государственной помощи ни для аэропортов, ни для авиакомпаний. Мы не видим, и поэтому, я уже говорил, реализация всего нового в нашем аэропорту нам придется отложить и приостановить до того момента, когда мы увидим какую-то плановую свою систему.
Георгий, я бы хотел задать вам вопрос. Скажите, пожалуйста, какие инфраструктурные проекты Борисполя пришлось остановить?
К сожалению, в этом вопросе мы столкнулись с 2 трудностями. Первое – это пандемия, которая началась в середине марта месяца. И второе – это отсутствие финансового плана, который до сих пор уже больше года не может получить аэропорт Борисполь. На данный момент все объекты капитального строительства остановлены. Часть из них законсервирована, то есть Министерство инфраструктуры и правительство абсолютно заблокировало нам все возможные процессы реализации любых инфраструктурных проектов в этом году. Ни одной гривны не было потрачено ни на какие проекты, ни на строительство нового перрона, о котором мы говорим, ни аварийно-спасательная станция. В общем, те проекты, которые мы вели, которые имеют причинно-следственную связь для развития аэропорта, для того, чтобы мы видели, что шаг за шагом есть большая концепция до 2045 года, которая предусматривает финансирование, инфраструктуру, пассажиропоток и много связанных вещей. Поэтому, к сожалению, пока мы с точки зрения реализации инфраструктуры стоим.
Георгий, скажите, пожалуйста, видите ли вы перспективы в создании авиационного альянса с участием государственных структур, грубо говоря, правительства Украины и авиационной индустрии, для того, чтобы восстановить авиационную отрасль после пандемии?
Вы знаете, да, я приведу вам пример. Не так давно я был в командировке в Варшаве, где у меня была возможность беседовать с генеральным директором аэропорта, и который рассказывал про систему управления авиационной отраслью, где фактически то, о чем вы говорите, больше реализовано. где аэропорт Варшавы, Шопен, где несколько региональных аэропортов, где базовая авиакомпания ЛОТ представляет большой альянс, которым он непосредственно руководит, в котором принимает участие государство и однозначно принимает участие государство. Это синергия всех структур и предприятий. Я вам скажу так, вы знаете, какой мой вывод после посещения Шопена? Мы точно не уступаем ни технически, ни сервисно, ни по многим метрикам. То есть мы обеспечены технически, оснащены всем необходимым, точно не хуже, чем они. Единственное, в чем мы уступаем, это в отсутствии стратегического видения развития отрасли. То, что, к сожалению, ни базовая авиакомпания, ни отдельно взятый аэропорт не может сделать без единого понимания государственной политики в разрезе развития авиационной отрасли. Вот это единственное, где нам не хватает видения. Да, поэтому.
Скажите,
Но
Георгий...
это на самом деле это было бы очень здорово, если бы мы понимали. Потому что только люди, не понимающие, говорят о том, что аэропорт Борисполь там конкурирует со Львовом или с Жулянами. Конечно, это не так. Аэропорт Борисполь должен конкурировать с хабами своей категории, вот, международными, мировыми хабами. Вот там наша конкуренция, а точно не внутри страны. Внутри страны мы точно все едины.
Спасибо. Георгий, скажите, как, на ваш взгляд, можно заинтересовать государство в поддержке авиационной индустрии? И мы сейчас не говорим конкретно о аэропорте Борисполь или о какой-то авиакомпании. Каким образом, по-вашему, донести до государства то, что авиационная индустрия это является стратегической отраслью развития всей экономики?
Вы знаете, это... Как заинтересовать государство? Я думаю, что любому государственному чиновнику должно быть понятно, что убыток сегодня – это намного лучше, чем безработица завтра. Потому что самой большой сложностью и таким комом, который катится, это является потеря рабочих мест. Поэтому на сегодняшний день государство финансирует Люфтганзу, КЛМ, Turkish Airlines, в частности, аэропорты строят миллиарды долларов, вкладываются в развитие авиационной инфраструктуры. В пользу очень часто каких-то отчасти даже коммерческих организаций так бывает, и нету такой проблемы и дилеммы в европейском и мировом пространстве, в отличие от того, как происходит это, к сожалению, у нас. Поэтому, вы знаете, это относится к тому вопросу, знаете, что если надо объяснять, то не надо.
Да, совершенно верно. Скажите, может быть, вернемся, конечно, финансовый элемент, он очень важен, особенно сейчас. Но если вернуться к вопросу Борисполя, скажите, пожалуйста, как вы видите роль Борисполь аэропорта в инфраструктуре страны? Насколько важно, или, может быть, у вас какое-то есть другое мнение по этому поводу? Роль Борисполя аэропорта.
Была принята государственная стратегия с точки зрения развития Борисполя как хабовой модели развития, как центрального аэропорта страны. И, конечно, в прошлом году мы перевезли более половины всех пассажиров в стране. Поэтому в нашем видении развития аэропорта и в целом отрасли Борисполь должен стоять в центре и помогать развиваться другим региональным аэропортам. Возможно, это, конечно, только еще в том случае, если мы будем иметь компанию или компании, потому что хабовая модель возможна только при наличии стратегического партнера национальной авиакомпании. По-другому это, к сожалению, не работает. По крайней мере, мы не верим. Тут есть мнение, что потенциально это можно сделать за счет ряда лоукостеров, но и наши международные коллеги из различных других аэропортов говорят, что не должен быть классный. Поэтому у нас точно есть план, у нас есть план долгосрочный, вот, для того, как развивать собственное предприятие, как в это могут быть включены, другие сопутствующие предприятия в отрасли. Поэтому, конечно, для нас большая мечта это единое видение, единое развитие.
Спасибо. Георгий, как вы относитесь к идее передачи управления всеми аэропортами или частью аэропортов Украины под, скажем, под аутсорсовое управление? Или аэропорты должны развиваться самостоятельно?
Смотрите, концессия, наверное, да, с точки зрения государственно-частного партнерства, там наиболее логичная с точки зрения взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Но я бы в этом вопросе был осторожным, потому что на данный момент аэропорт Борисполь, ну, если мы говорим до пандемии, а на самом деле, ну, посмотрим, как будет, потому что сейчас сложно давать прогноз, да, то есть мы говорим о том, что, то есть за тот период до начала эпидемии, вот, мое мнение однозначное, что в концессию аэропорт Борисполь отдавать не нужно. Это предприятие, которое генерит там, миллиарды гривен дивидендов в пользу государства. Вот. Плюс оно дает развиваться ну, многим процессам внутри страны. То есть если это западный инвестор, есть мировая практика, которая приводила к тому, что выкуп концессионерам какого-то аэропорта приводил фактически к изменению его стратегии и фактически уничтожение его с точки зрения там, развития того, которое виделось изначально. Сейчас очень мало примеров успешных концессий, мы только их начинаем, поэтому давайте, то есть, ну, точно не нужно начинать с такого громадного предприятия, как аэропорт Борисполь, потому что у нас есть большие сомнения, что у нас есть те специалисты, которые способны качественно выписать эти концессионные соглашения. Поэтому...
Спасибо. Спасибо. Георгий, скажите, какая перспектива повышения категории посадочной полосы в Борисполе до категории 3А и выше?
Действительно, это хороший вопрос, спасибо. Вот, мы в рамках развития планировали полную модернизацию второй взлетно-посадочной зоны. К сожалению, и там делается стадия предпроекта, и мы планировали реализацию этого большого достаточно инфраструктурного проекта, которая бы позволила и в техническом плане сделать следующий шаг вперед. К сожалению, на данный момент, ну, я бы не хотел там более глубоко комментировать этот вопрос, потому что мы ведем ряд переговоров там с различными финансовыми структурами, но точно могу вам сказать, что в ближайшие годы в этом возникнет потребность. Поэтому нам нужно развиваться технически обязательно по всем направлениям, и взлет-посадка является одним из ключевых.
Спасибо. Спасибо. Георгий, несколько вопросов еще, которые я бы хотел, чтобы вы ответили. Скажите, пожалуйста, как в Борисполе аэропорте контролируется ситуация с превенцией коронавируса, в частности, когда обслуживаются транзитные пассажиропотоки? То есть, когда пассажиры из, грубо говоря, красных стран, красной зоны, перемешиваются с пассажирами из зеленой зоны вот именно в терминале. Каким образом вот аэропорт Борисполь?
Смотрите, это тот вопрос, на котором сегодня задается мировые аналитики авиационные. На данный момент выстраиваются новые технологии взаимодействия пассажиров в трансферной зоне. Например, некоторые страны не допускают даже в трансферную зону пассажиров, которые прилетают. В данный момент, с точки зрения Борисполя, к сожалению, на данный момент мы начали развиваться после пандемии таким образом, что трансферный пассажир у нас конкретно отсутствует. Мы анализируем сейчас лучшие практики мировые, которые над этим работают в данный момент. И я уверен, что к моменту возобновления трансферного пассажиропотока мы будем готовы и уже будем иметь возможность получить там наиболее эффективную модель для безопасности наших пассажиров.
Понятно. Георгий, скажите, опять же, возвращаясь к этой же самой теме, будут ли пассажироперевозки с точки зрения пассажира более сложными, более тяжелыми, более энерго- и финансозатратными по сравнению с тем, что было? Иными словами, планирует ли Борисполь аэропорт вводить какие-то новые контроль, требования для пассажиров и так далее? Что будет нового?
Вы имеете в виду эпидемиологические требования или
да.
в целом?
Да.
Вы знаете, что очень важно? Вообще очень бы не хотелось, чтобы авиация стала тяжелее. Авиация становилась легче последние годы. И поэтому она имела возможность такого роста. Где полететь на самолете это было достаточно просто, и люди летали на работу фактически раз в неделю, может быть, раз в день. На данный момент, к сожалению, есть целый ряд норм и правил, которые мы уже внедрили в аэропорту. Они связаны с тем, что больше... Андрей?
Да.
Прошу прощения, окей.
Да.
Вот. То есть, на самом деле, от доступа непосредственно в терминал, от времени прибытия, от средств защиты, эти правила есть, они при правильном ознакомлении с ними, они не создадут дополнительных больших трудностей для пассажиров. Поэтому их не стоит бояться, но их точно нужно выучить, потому что это прежде всего уважение к другому пассажиру и безопасность не только себя, но и других людей. Поэтому было бы здорово, если бы мы в этом вопросе становились все грамотнее и не боялись путешествовать самолетом.
Понятно. Георгий, большое вам спасибо. Мы были очень рады видеть вас на нашем марафоне. Опять же, повторюсь, я надеюсь, что это не последний раз, когда вы у нас в гостях. И мне было очень интересно, надеюсь, нашей аудитории тоже. И сейчас мы тогда освобождаем место для нового спикера. Тогда большое
Спасибо большое вам, Андрей. В завершение хочу вас поблагодарить еще раз и сказать, что было бы здорово, если бы наша дискуссия вышла за пределы, и государственные органы понимали, что будет очень сложно, одна из самых пострадавших отраслей авиации и туризм. Но мы оптимисты, я уверен, что мы будем возвращаться к нормальной жизни. Спасибо вам большое.
Я в этом не сомневаюсь. Большое вам спасибо. Все хорошо. So, dear visitors, now we will let the floor for our speaker, Oleg Anatsky. Hi, Alex.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for the interest in this marathon, and I would like to thank the organizing team of Ukrainian Aviation Forum for this opportunity. It's really great momentum to have all the aviation community together, even with this digital means, not meeting in person. Anyway, I will start my presentation. The initial idea was to have it like sweet and simple, but unfortunately the topic of our today's discussion is a little bit different. Anyway, we are still, as all our colleagues, looking with optimism to our professional future. Let me know, can you see the presentation?
Well, not so far.
Okay.
If you could share it with us, that will
yes,
be...
Yes,
oh,
yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Make it
Working.
full screen.
Yes. Great.
Fantastic.
So financially, this year will go down as the worst year in aviation history. On average, every day of this year, we'll add and adding more than 200 millions to industry losses. And current figure, current hour forecast, the total over year losses for the industry will be more than 80 billions. Especially for Europe, airlines in Europe are set to lose about 21 billion this year, and the passenger demand will decline by half. So, as was already mentioned by my colleagues, this puts at risk more than 6 million jobs related to the aviation industry in Europe only. A new research from IATA shows the impact on the European aviation industry on the economy caused by shutdown of air traffic due to the COVID pandemic, and especially you can see in the table for Ukraine, the impact on the passenger side is it's our forecast will result in decline of 55% on a yearly basis. In passenger terms, it's equal more than 10 million passenger sectors. In revenues, 1.3 billion, and in terms of the jobs, this put at risk more than 80,000 jobs in aviation and related areas. So the latest assessment from us, from IATA economic teams, shows that outlook at a national level has worsened, and for major aviation markets in Europe since April. And for example, the passenger numbers, airline revenues, GDP, and every metric in 5 major European aviation metrics are in negative currently. An accelerated recovery of air transport in Europe is vital if the worst of these impacts is to be avoided. This can be achieved through government actions in 2 priority areas. First area, coordinated restart of air travel, with the opening of borders, including elimination of quarantine and operating rule based on the health guidance set down by ICAO and IASA, and also European Center of Disease Control. So there are 2 documents, one document known as a CART, ICAO document, sorry, and IASA and ECDC document regulation. So the second priority area is continued financial and regulatory support from government, particularly direct financial aid, an extension of 80/20 slot waiver rule, different relief in terms of the taxes and charges. So the severity of COVID impact is clearly shown in semi.
Alex, we lost the audio. Alex. Alex, we lost the audio. Can you hear us? Alex? We lost the audio. Alex, just. No audio. Can you try to plug out your mic? Probably you can use the computer's mic instead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are back again.
Okay. But I cannot hear you. I'm sorry. something happened. It's technology. So, but the government support is very unevenly spread between countries, and unfortunately, very limited support is provided for emerging markets, and airlines operating on emerging markets and like Ukraine facing significant difficulties obtaining such a kind of the support. With open borders and rising demand next year, airlines will be in a recovery mode, but still financially fragile. Passenger revenues will be more than 1/3 smaller comparing to the last year. The cut in losses will come from reopened borders, leading to increased volumes of travelers. Competition among airlines will no doubt be even more intense. People will want to fly again, provided that they have confidence in their personal financial situation and the measures taken to keep travelers safe. The challenge for year 2021 will be turning reduced losses of the next year into the profits that airlines will need to repay their debts from this terrible crisis. The post-COVID recovery in the air transport industry has three critical elements. First one, containment of the health crisis. The second one, loosening of the travel restriction and border closures. And the third one, very important, the restoration of the passenger confidence to resume flying. Each of these factors will impact both the timing and the speed of industry recovery. So this table is regularly updated. So all of you aware of the IATA thematic service or IATA Travel Center. So you can check on the regular basis. All the updates are reflected here. But it's also important to mention that sometimes some jurisdictions, they're changing their minds and regulations a few times a day. For example, you're all aware about the latest cases between UK and Spain. The passenger confidence is fundamental element in the recovery. So on this table, you may see the dynamics in the passenger behavior based on different surveys. It was 3 surveys, one on February, second was in April, and the latest one was conducted in June. And unfortunately, we see the trend in passenger behavior change that the majority of the travelers would like to postpone travel, would like to wait a little bit more than 2 months, more than 6 months, and even some passengers more than 1 year to restart travels. About certain steps taken on IATA side, about IATA collaboration and support. We requested global suspension of the slot rule due to coronavirus, and thanks to all regulators for this flexibility already provided to airlines. I would like also especially to mention the Ukrainian civil aviation authorities. Last week, we have obtained the second 80-20 slot rule waiver for all Ukrainian airports for the next winter schedule. Also, we are offering support to IOSA operating carriers, which cannot perform this audit due to COVID restriction. And we would like also to extend this audit for the next period or the next 6 months. A few months ago, IATA agreed with Eurocontrol, member states and the European air navigation service providers to delay payments due for the air navigation services. 41 member states of Eurocontrol, which coordinated air traffic operation across Europe, voted to delay payments on February charges to November this year, and payments for March, April, and May will be delayed to the next year. This payment will result in total for more than 1 billion of euros. And it's really, really huge relief for the European, and not only European airlines, but operating to Europe, and good support of the airlines' liquidity. Together with the ACI, we have jointly issued a paper laying out a pathway for restarting of the aviation industry, safely restarting aviation. It's multi-layer approach. Airline and airport have cooperated to build a roadmap for resuming operation, which reassures the traveling public that health and safety remains the overall priority. The joint approach proposed a layer approach on measures across the entire passenger journey to minimize the risk of transmission of COVID in airports and on board of aircrafts. So such measures should be globally consistent and subject to continuous review, improvement, and removal that no longer required to ensure an even recovery. So our main idea and proposal is all possible alternatives to the quarantine. First of all, it's reducing the risk of importing infected passenger into the country by discouraging symptomatic passengers from travel, by different public health risk mitigation measures, and by COVID testing for passengers from high-risk countries. And also reducing the impact of the importing COVID by reducing the risk of transmission during whole journey, contact tracing, and reducing risk of transmission at the destination point. Just, you know, oops, sorry. Oops. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Just to summarize my presentation, what is the most important element during this crisis is the collaboration and partnership. And currently we are working successfully together with all players, with all government agencies, and we're really facing enormous support. Still, we're lacking on certain attention. Still, as my colleague from Bristol Airport mentioned, we are lacking on the overall government-driven and supported by all players, airlines, airports, air navigation service providers, government strategy, aviation strategy, especially for our market, for Ukraine. So we're always ready to support our members airlines and all the aviation industry, and we are here to serve and to support you. Thank you very much for attention. I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Alex.
But I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Oh, really? Well, I can definitely hear you, and you can stop sharing your screen. Can you hear us?
I cannot hear you.
Us? Could you check your speakers? Can you hear us? Can you?
No.
Alex?
Yes.
So
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
So you're back. Great. Alex, we have a couple of questions. First of all of us face these travel restrictions like face mask, then let's say sanitizers and all this stuff. Do you think that will become a norm for all travels starting from now? Will it be a new normality?
Yes, of course, for the certain period of time, absolutely. Maybe some different measures. As you know, now we're all know that the new protocol, the new sanitation protocols are the new normality for all airlines, and new disinfection process for the airport areas. And so we will continuously face this situation. And normally, you mentioned, someone mentioned before, all this bio passports or passports with a vaccination or something like that. As a different agencies, international agencies and international organizations, we don't believe that this is really useful measure, and it cannot be easily implemented. So currently, all the well-known factors, social distancing, masks, disinfection, sanitation, and all processes on board are designed to minimize the interaction, minimize to contact, and so it's our new normality for certain period, and no one can predict for how long and how the situation will evolve.
I see. Thank you, Alex. Another question. Do you expect, according to your statistics that you showed us, do you expect the wave of airline bankruptcies starting from very soon, let's say from October and November?
It's interesting question because initially our expectation was at the beginning, at the middle of spring, it was enormous pressure on airlines' liquidity, and we are extremely happy to report that the number of bankruptcies are extremely low, because on majority of jurisdiction, airlines received really vital support from the government, from the investors, and now we are talking about like only few bankruptcies, but the financial strength of the carriers are different, and so it's difficult to predict. So we will see in the nearest future how the borders will reopen, how the carriers will operate, and then it's also an issue of agility. So how the airlines are flexible to adapt to the new reality, to change the schedule, fleet type. Yeah, it's a very difficult time for our members.
Alex, do you think it is possible to separate flight crews, pilots and cabin crews, from being in contact with the passengers either on board or in the airport areas, just to avoid the spread of the diseases?
Sorry,
the question from the audience is:
yes,
is it possible to completely separate the pilots from the passengers when going through for formalities at the airport?
As I understand, currently they are really separated everywhere. They don't have any contacts, and they use like the separate lines, and the interaction is very limited.
I see. Yeah. Okay, Alex, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you. And we are looking forward to meet you again. And we will invite another speaker. Thank you very much, Alex. Hello, Galina. Can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you. I hope you also can hear me and see me.
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you.
Thanks. First of all, let me thank you for all organizers and to you for such a nice platform. And it's not only for aviation professionals, but also for us. It's been a long time since I saw my colleagues last time. So you brought a good point to see them, to bring them together. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you. So you're welcome to share your presentation and your knowledge about Qatar Airways. So the floor is yours.
I think it will be a success case because I will show what measures have been done by our airline, and it's really important for our passengers to feel safe. So I will try to share my screen.
Please do.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so you know that we have been challenged with unprecedented times and have had to adapt to a new reality and maintain the robust and agile network. So our main motto for my company became, "You can rely on us." Understanding then for passengers, the first priority is to be able to be sure that they can travel. We implemented lots of changes which show that we are very flexible with the tickets and travels. As you know that we implemented such initiative as to holding ticket for not 1 year but 2 years. There is unlimited changes for tickets, both for date and destinations. Also exchange for travel vouchers for 100%, swap for Q miles, and full refund of tickets in case if we don't operate this flight. So I think for most airlines and for Qatar Airways as well, it was the first time in the history that such a flexible policy, travel with confidence, is now in place. The second, this is a slide which showing that the Qatar Airways has led the industry during these challenging times. We took people home safely, reliably on more flights to more destinations than any other airlines. So simply we become the current largest passenger airline, the largest cargo airline, and also our Hamad International Airport named the third best airport in the world. The airline's ability not only to continue operating, but also to expand more than 30 new destinations despite the challenges, set the building blocks to be able to continue operating with a strong schedule throughout the crisis. You can see that there will be 17,000 of flights. We carried around 2 million of passengers during this crisis period. So. The next one. I will go into details of our safety in the next slides, but here just to say that in addition to already strict existing procedures on hygiene, we have introduced new safety and security measures, as well as the most innovative training. So this is main idea is to provide our passengers, our travelers, seamless flights. Seamless, safe flights before the flight, at the check-in, and ending with the boarding gates. So what have we implemented? You know that our hub airport is Hamad International Airport, located in Qatar, Doha. Hamad International Airport started to use a number of very new solutions for safety measures. We use several technologies, including infrared thermal imaging, artificial intelligence, and augmented reality display. You see this in the picture, it's not from the movie, it's a real one. Those are our employees in Hamad International Airport. So they use this screen and helmets. So if passengers have fever or any symptoms of COVID-19, we can see it through this temperature scanning. Also, there is a disinfectant robots, fully autonomous mobile devices, which concentrated UV light, known to be effective in eliminating any type of viruses or majority of infections. The robots are being deployed in vulnerable high-flow passengers areas to reduce the spread of coronavirus and other viruses. Also, the new challenge is luggage. As you know, the virus spreads not only in the airport area, not only from passenger to passenger, but could also potentially be in the luggage of passengers. So ultraviolet disinfection tunnels is using now to disinfect all checked-in passenger luggage. And also airport started to conduct regular disinfection of all baggage trolleys and tubes. Also to mention about the lounges, we didn't suspend operation of our lounges, neither lounges nor our transit airport, Oryx, in the airport. Our lounges just rearrange the social areas. All surfaces are regularly disinfected every 1 hour or every half an hour. Also, there is meet and assist services, which keeps us to reduce interaction with other passengers, calls Al-Maha Departure Lounge and services. This is meet and assist services. They are also working. Starting from July, Al-Maha and Doric Transit Lounge also opened. And business class passengers can enjoy Al Nurjan Business Lounge as it was before all this crisis. Also, there is a fully assisted buffet, individual serve portions. So we kept these services, but we started to implement new measures. Also to mention about social distance, you know, this is very important. So in the Hamad International Airport, this is really a place when we can afford to maintain this distance. It is very new and very large and spacious airport, so there is possibility to provide this social distance for passengers. Also during boarding, I don't know if you were flying with our airline, but during boarding, even before COVID, we had the zone boarding. So not all the passengers in the one time were boarding the same gate, but also we had the A zone, B zone, 3 zone. So now we already implemented this practice. We have modifications of the boarding seating arrangement. And also we encourage passengers to follow hygiene practices. We have sanitizers all over the process of check-in boarding.
Galina, may I ask you a question? Sorry to interrupt. Do you provide the passengers with the paper gloves on board?
There is no paper gloves, but we provide passengers with masks if they don't have them, their masks, and also face shields.
I see. Thank you.
And this is on another slide. So I will just show you what we mentioned. Just in this slide, starting of July, travelers are required to wear face coverings in flight, through the flight. They don't need to carry their face shields. We have our own, so passengers who doesn't have it just can pick up it from the check-in. Also, we give kits containing face mask, gloves, and sanitizer. We encourage physical distancing, of course, and especially if there's flights with lighter loads, we allow people just, to sit not one by one, but to keep some distance between seats. Also to mention our product, which is now very popular, I would say, and very safe. You know that we have our new upgraded business class called Q-Suite. This is a hybrid of first class and business class. Simply, it's a private room which you can close the door, and to fly, you can also make don't disturb indicator. You can work there, you can sleep there because there is a flatbed seats. So Q-Suite is simply a good solution for such challenges as COVID epidemic, because you are fully autonomous in your flight. Also to mention about cabin crew, not only passengers are in the risk zone, but also our cabin crew in the risk zone of coronavirus. So we started to wear, our cabin crew started to wear personal protective equipment. Our crew is wearing this personal protecting equipment over their uniforms, in addition to gloves, mask, glasses, and passengers are asked to wear face coverings in flight. Also, our crew are regularly thermally screened before and after every flight. If anyone on board shows any signs of infection, the cabin is quarantined and tested. Also, you know that face shield and face mask must be worn as of July in 2020 in all flights which Qatar Airways is operating. To mention about catering, we didn't, there is a lot of question to Qatar Airways. Did you skip the catering on board? No, we didn't. We still need to preserve this high level and the name of best world's airline. We did some adjustments to our in-flight experience. So the all meal service cutlery and are washed with detergent at the very high temperatures. In business class, we have dine-on-demand service. We have full drink selection, also single-use menu cards, newspapers and magazine available only through Oryx One application. We don't have any papers on board. And also on board social areas are temporarily closed, meaning that, in the Airbuses and Dreamliners, there were lounge zones during the flight. So now it's temporarily closed, but still you can unlimited have your drinks and food and enjoy your flight. Also for economy class as well, full economy class service is available. There is no changes in this. Food, IMS, cutlery presented still as usual, and full drink selection is available. Filtration systems. I believe you know what is HEPA filters. So our aircraft is crafts is very young. We have a very young fleet, around 2.5 years. So these HEPA filters removed almost 100% of viral and bacterial contaminants from recirculated air. That's why it's very safe to travel, despite everything that people can be scared to be in some closed spaces. Also, our linen blankets and headsets, we also can't skip it to give it to passengers. All our linen blankets, pillows, washed and dried at 90 degrees. They are cleaned and perfectly dressed while wearing gloves and sealed into individual packaging. All the headsets carefully refurbished and sanitized. They are even individually repacked by our staff wearing hygienic disposable vinyl gloves. So we minimized all the risks. Also, you can see our current map where we are flying. You know, even in darkest days for us, we never have fallen below the 30 destinations. And one by one, we restore our destinations based on country restrictions and based on demand. Also to mention that this year we didn't have announced Skytrax awards. You know that in the Paris Air Show, every year Skytrax announce a winner who is the best airline. This year, of course, because of pandemic, there was no Skytrax awards, so we still keep the proud title of best airline in the world based on 2019. World best business class, best airline in the Middle East, and the world best business class seat. Thank you very much. This is all from me.
Thank you, Galina. So if you could turn off your screen share, so I will ask you a couple of quick questions.
I will try to do so. 1 second.
Okay, so here we are.
Yeah.
Galina, we have a question from the audience. What is Qatar Airways' plan to reduce the fleet?
Well, it's been announced. I will not say reduce the fleet. Just currently, we announced that we will keep our Airbus 380 grounded until there is a good justification to resume operation. You know that in our internal benchmarking, we saw that our fleet's fuel consumption and carbon is more 95% more than other types of aircrafts. That's why currently we grounded A380s. But instead, we offer our passengers to fly modern Dreamliners and Airbus 350s.
I see. Galina, do you think that Qatar Airways, to your personal understanding, will be stronger, better after COVID, or do you think it will be hit by the pandemic heavily?
Well, the short answer is yes, because even during the darkest days, we continue to operate. We continue to be a friend in need for our passengers and partners. So definitely we'll learn how to respond fast to new challenges. And I think this experience is needful for us to grow and to become stronger.
Galina, now Qatar's flights are scheduled for the end of October. So is there any chance to have these flights earlier in your schedule? Or this is the day set?
Yes, I told you that all the restoring of flights based on the demand and also on country restrictions. So far, we scheduled for winter 2020 of 25th of October. So now the date is for sure. I don't know if it could be earlier than that date, but starting of 25th of October, we already see positive signs. There is a demand for travel. And Alex also mentioned that somehow industry started to recover.
Galina, in regard of what Alex said and what you are telling us, what vision you have for 2020 and maybe for 2021 for the aviation industry in general and for Qatar in particular?
Well, it's far too early to predict something or to anticipate what changes will become more permanent, as this will be driven by availability of vaccinations, also consumer behavior, airport and health protocols. I think we can say it a little bit later, not now.
Not now. Okay. So, Galina, do you have any hints for your colleagues in the aviation industry? I mean, the airlines that would probably be very well good to use, especially now.
Stick to all the rules which airlines are offering. This is my personal experience, and for all the passengers who are flying, you should understand that airline imposed all these protocols, safety reasons, not to challenge you, but to save you and to protect you. So let us all respect this one, and not, because I already traveled twice during the pandemic, and I saw some cases when passengers think that airlines challenging them by wearing the face masks or face shields, and they are not very happy with this. But this is to protect you, protect your health, protect your family. So only one tip, just stick to the rules and don't skip flying. If you scheduled your vacation, you can still go. Check all the restrictions, check destination, and fly.
Thank you, Galina, for your nice report. Really, it was very interesting to see how Qatar is doing in these very, well, challenging times, I have to say. Thank you, Galina. Thank you for giving this presentation, and hope to see you soon.
Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. And now we are letting the floor to our next speaker.
Hello.
Hi, Simonas. Nice to see you.
Very good to see you too.
So, could you just introduce ourselves and let's roll the ball?
Yes, I hope you should see my screen now.
Yes, we do.
Great. So my name is Simonas Bartkus, and I'm representing a Swiss airline data intelligence provider called CH Aviation. We are based in Switzerland, and we are collecting quite a tons of data of airline fleets, schedules, capacities. Also running one of the most influential airline industry news portal at the same name called CH Aviation and CH Aviation Pro. So, and my goal today is give a little bit overview how we see from our data how the recovery looks like across the industry, and how it looks at a different parts of the world. So I will speak a little bit on COVID-19 impact for manufacturers, later on aircraft groundings, and also on scheduled capacity in different regions around the world. So we see that this crisis actually touched, we believe, every player in this industry, starting from aircraft manufacturers. And we see that the new aircraft deliveries worldwide dropped down. In last month, in June, we see that new aircraft deliveries almost tripled compared to numbers we saw in May or April, but it's still very far from 2019 levels. And the results for two largest manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus, are different. We see now that Boeing was way more impacted with new aircraft deliveries compared to Airbus. It comes in line with Boeing's problems with 737 MAXs, but also we see that during the last 3 to 4 months, Boeing only was able to deliver mainly freighter aircrafts when Airbus, even with a drop of more than 2/3, managed to deliver passenger aircraft during these crises. And this is the natural impact for aircraft manufacturers, because we all see that airlines don't need that much aircraft anymore. Still, we see that the recovery already started, and at the darkest point of this crisis, which happened worldwide at the end of April, we saw that 59%, and in absolute numbers, this is more than 19,000 aircraft were grounded by airline decisions. Not maybe by voluntary decisions, but they were pushed to ground this aircraft because they do not needed this aircraft for their operation. And since then, slowly airlines are taking aircraft back from the storage, and every 2 weeks we see that there is less and less aircraft grounded worldwide. And if 1 month back at the end of June, we saw around 54% of airline fleets still grounded. Now this number stands at 46%. So we see that every day airlines are now taking aircraft from the storage and returning it back to service. And the behavior across the industry in different regions is quite different. We see that during the last month, airlines took back around 2,500 aircraft back from storage in a month. So this could be a sign of quite fastly paced recovery, but still the differences exist between different regions. And we see now that Asia is leading by airline activity, and only 37% of all the fleets are grounded in this region. In North America, we see that it is 40% of fleets still grounded, but we see a bit different behavior in this part of the world, because many airlines, especially in the United States, they're keeping the aircraft active, but just flying way more or less than it used to fly in normal times. And our region, Europe, airlines here still have only 3,500 aircraft in active mode out of 8,200 total registered by the operators in Europe. So still 58% of the aircraft were grounded by the end of July. And we could see that the aircraft groundings in different countries are also really different. This is the top countries as I listed here, with the smallest percent of the aircraft being active. Let's say country of Panama in Central America. Airlines there have only 10% of the fleet active there. Mainly because their biggest airline, Copa Airlines, they have fully suspension of operations still going on. What we see in Ukraine, we see that there are totally now 122 aircraft at 21 carriers registered here in Ukraine. And by today, we see that 69% of these aircraft are active. So the percentage of activity in Ukraine, we see now it's at 56% of total fleets are are active now, and this is actually a bit more than world's average.
So Simon, just sorry for interrupting. These statistics for Ukraine is very interesting. So can you comment these numbers? Do they show us like the signs of growing of operations in the country?
Well,
talking about Ukraine.
Well, I would say more or less every country, with some exceptions worldwide, is now recovering a bit, and that's the same case with Ukraine as well. So we see that airlines are taking aircraft back from storage to the operation, and the level which is the current level of activity, but based on the grounded fleets number, it's a bit above the world's average. So I could say that the return is a little bit faster compared to the world's average. If I answered this, if I answered your question, this way.
Thank you.
Looking forward, we're also following the scheduled capacities for the each week when this crisis spread worldwide in the middle of March. And if we see that starting point in the middle of March was around 90 million seats scheduled for a week to depart all the airports worldwide, we see now that when recovery started since middle of April or beginning of May, we see now this total number of seats scheduled for the current week jumped up to 61 million seats. Of course, the market has some seasonality. It's different in different parts of the world, but we should expect that at this time last year, we should see more than 100 million seats scheduled to depart airports worldwide. So the recovery is happening, and it's happening actually every week, but it's still way far from the levels we saw in 2019. And I believe to understand the picture and what we should expect here, we should look how different regions around the world are behaving in this crisis. And Asia being the largest region for aviation market, it was actually the first region that brought optimism to the industry, and mainly China domestic market, which started to recover after this crisis first. But we see that the recovery in Asia is not really steady, but it's a little bit bouncy. So I believe that we may see something in different regions as well, in our region of Europe as well, and possibly in Eastern Europe as well. What I believe is it's really bad sign, and it's a challenging sign showing for us in the next slide, is that the total number of weekly seats scheduled in North America, and North America it's United States, it's actually flattened for the last 4 weeks. So after the steep growth and after steep recovery, and especially jump for Independence Day related travel in the United States, now we see that the capacity growth in North America really flattened. So we really have to understand that actually because North American markets are mainly domestic markets of United States, Canada, and Mexico, and some other countries. So we have really, and they don't have so many like government imposed restrictions to travel, especially on domestic flights. But we have really to understand that the virus still is the key cause of this crisis. And if we will see the numbers going up, we can expect that it might be that the passenger behavior and the passenger willingness to travel can be impacted again if some numbers will grow up. But what actually, it's really optimistic, and I would say even maybe it's too optimistic. Europe region is now actually the real star of capacity growth these days. Usually it's the third largest region after Asia and North America, but we see now that airlines in Europe are adding more and more seats each week, and the pace of the recovery is now really fast. So I think my personal opinion here is that it might be even too fast-paced recovery, and question is it really sustainable? And because usually the load factor data lags quite far behind that, we might see that the airlines are rushing too fast to bring back the capacity, and the question is it really sustainable? But at the same time, we all know that Europe is the most seasonal market worldwide, and most of the people want to travel in summer in Europe. So I believe that this behavior of airlines are really driven by that airlines still want to get something out of this summer. So Asia, North America, and Europe are the three largest markets for airline industry, and three other regions are really smaller. But we can see that actually South America is still waiting to start recovery. The industry still stays at a very low level. It raised a bit compared to the lowest point in the beginning of May, but if we saw the graph for Europe with the fastly paced growth, so this is completely not the case. Not the case in South America, where the industry still remains mainly as I would call it like in a freeze status. Africa actually is usually the fifth busiest continent in terms of air travel, but actually that's not the case for now. The total number of seats cut is smaller in Africa than South America. So technically now there are more seats in Africa than South America. But we can also see that it's really far from recovery, and the recovery pace there is really low compared to the ones we see in Europe, especially, or in Asia, or even in North America, despite the fact that North American growth stopped for last few weeks. And the same case goes with Oceania region. This is mainly Australia and New Zealand. Again, it had some signs of recovery, but now even shows signs of downward trend again. We can hear that the government imposed more restrictions to travel, especially in Australia. So looking at all these pictures and all this different behavior of airlines, because the number of scheduled seats to depart is mainly what airlines putting at their schedules, the capacity they put, and waiting for passengers to fill those seats. So we can see that, especially in some regions, we are really far from recovery, and even though the recovery in Europe is now really fastly paced growth, but my personal opinion is that we should still expect some turbulence there. I already heard in the discussions today that we haven't heard about so many bankruptcies yet, but with competition going up, so we can really see something happening, especially going towards the autumn. And,
may I ask you the question now in regard of the bankruptcy? This is a very painful question. So, to your personal opinion, who will be next?
Well, I cannot. I believe I don't have actually. It's not because I'm hiding, but I don't have strong opinion on that. We really saw that the government support for some state-owned or just national carriers in some countries were really unprecedented, and then many airlines received bailout or cash subsidies or other indirect subsidies. But at the same time, they will still need to compete in Europe with the carriers like Ryanair or Wizz Air, which are still in very strong cash positions and very strong ambitions and ability to grow. Maybe not to grow in this season, but to grow market share levels. So I'm really afraid that many markets can go to price wars now, because we see that there are many seats being put back in the market in Europe, and these price wars usually it hurts the weakest players mainly.
Okay, thank you. So, Simonas, thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of questions I would like to ask you now. So, if you could just turn off your presentation, that we could talk a little bit. Yeah, and the screen sharing as well.
Where is that?
It's in the Zoom.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Where is my?
Here you are, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so just a second, what is going on? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's someone else's screen.
Yeah. So, Jesus. Sorry for that, folks. Just a second. Okay. So, right, Simone. So the last question probably that I would like to ask you, how quickly do you think we could meet the new recovery day? I mean, starting from now.
I mean, I'm a bit personally. I'm a bit more optimistic, seeing how airlines are rushing back to flying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we will return to 2019 levels soon, and it's a question if we return in 2022 or 2023. But I believe that if the government restrictions will be lifted next summer, I still think that industry can stay at like -20 or -25% next year, which would be rather good compared to the situation we have now.
So in general, you see the positive signs, and there are some, bright things about the future, or you are still.
I think so. I'm really optimistic, and especially in the Western markets of Europe, I would say that it really see the recovery even maybe faster than we expected to see like 2 months ago.
I see. Okay, Simone, thank you very much for really interesting insight on the statistic. It was really nice. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Dear viewers, and we are giving the floor to our next speaker. Hello, Vadim.
Yes, hello. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sure.
Right.
Sure,
Yes. Hi. Yes. Hi, everyone. Now I assume I go to, right. Is that the right one? Yes, should be the right one. Okay. Yep. Here we go. Right. Can you see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes. Well, hi again, everyone. Hi, Andrei. And yes, talking about connecting Ukraine, I think ever since March, we have been facing the challenges of the most disconnected world that would be in anyone's memories, right? And as we're looking at the aviation industry, and there were no players who were not affected, and even like DHL, who is acknowledged as the world's busiest airlines in many parts of the world, we still have numerous challenges to deal with. How do we connect? How do we connect our customers? Right. I mean, first of all, I would like just to give a brief idea. Well, some of you may know, for some it's news, you know, what is DHL and what is Deutsche Post DHL Group. So we're a part of the Deutsche Post DHL Group, and is basically the logistics company that does everything from the mail delivery and parcel provider in Germany, to then going ocean freight, to road freight, to rail freight, to air express deliveries, logistics, and also our new division, e-commerce enablers. Right. So basically, you know, like there isn't any of our divisions that hasn't been impacted by this crisis. And, you know, in some of, you know, facing the challenges of, you know, lack of the volumes, but I would tell you excessive volumes can be extremely hard challenges to overcome. What we have seen so far, it's been either like in postal division in Germany, all of a sudden 40% growth connected with the e-commerce deliveries, right, into into the people going into online shopping. And this is something that, assuming in the country where everything, I mean, a lot of things have stopped, where do you get extra people? And I'm just telling you, you know, one of these like real sound examples that we had. Another one, ever since China has reopened, all of a sudden, within 1 week, we accumulated extra 3,000 tons of urgent supplies. 3,000 tons. Those who were, you know, work for operation, you understand how many 777 freighters you will need to get that out from China. So all this, unfortunately, you know, we were able, you know, to deal with all these challenges, but yeah, I would tell you, there is a price tag attached to it. And obviously, as we were talking about commercial airlines, obviously, commercial air is very important for us. I think the strengths of DHL Express, now we're talking, because I am the country manager of DHL Express in Ukraine, we're talking about DHL Express. And the strengths of DHL Express, it's the own network of fleet with over 260 aircraft, which allows us to provide overnight deliveries to 22 major hubs and over 500 airports. However, commercial airlines has always been a vital part of our network. And this is like really, really important. Always along with our own aircraft, there has been always a need to buy the capacity from the commercial air, from the passengers. Airline. And obviously all these suspensions, you know, and the reductions that we have seen, they may not have gone unnoticed for us. Obviously challenges to overcome. Here is actually, I have a map, and the blue ones is the areas. This is particularly related to our network. So the blue ones is the areas where we have felt, you know, the impact of the lack of the space on the commercial air, or even the full suspension. And this is like, this is a serious issue that we had to to overcome, where to find the extra, extra freighters. So everything basically what was available in the world has been utilized in our network. And similar to some, to some of the countries which have never seen DHL own aircrafts, we had to launch the new routes. And at this time, I would say we've been through the most difficult part, right? I think the major, challenges came from China. When China had the stuff to send out there, China had the test systems, China had all the protection, available to be sent out. The question was, how do you get it out? Parallel to 70% of the commercial air being suspended or being restricted, and also obviously the space on this commercial air, because we're not the only one operating from these countries. There are others who are looking. Obviously, as a result, for us, it's been the huge cost increase connected with the transportation, something that we haven't seen before. Just to give an example, if before we would use, hundreds of daily flights from China, I'm just giving China because it was one of the most sound examples for us. We would use, commercial air. So when having this 3,000, and we're talking probably about somewhere mid of April, dozens of Boeing 777 freighters had to be sent empty to China to pick up the stuff, to bring it then to Europe, to Africa, to US, and to all the continents. It's just an example. There was there was no easy life for anyone, because some of us seen as a good, seeing us as in a good position, right? You haven't got commercial. Many of your competitors actually have to suspend services, move from air into the road. It was also an example with some of the companies operating in Ukraine who were using commercial air. They had to move to the road freight to the nearby European countries. So yes, we were in advantage position, but however, it hasn't been a sweet spot for anyone. And also a question is how we're using, what we're doing at this time. So basically every month we will have more and more converted passenger aircraft joining into our network. And this, I've just been on the call with our CEO, and it's been announced it will be actually one of the strategic moves of the company, actually taking the opportunity, because obviously the price is going down, for the aircraft, everyone, and we know the number of cases, when airlines are trying to get rid of their aircraft. So obviously for us, it's an opportunity with a reasonable cost actually to expand our own network, because we have to be realistic. When this will finish, it will take time. It will really take time. And at the time when we will have the vaccines, there will be enormous demand for the vaccines to be transferred, whether they come from China or they come from China, US, or Europe, whoever, these will be, millions and millions of the shipments, which will have to be urgently delivered worldwide. So we have to be prepared for that. But being realistic, obviously nobody knows the time when this will come, but it will. Now, I would like to say a few words about Ukraine. We operate in Ukraine since 1991, and DHL, Ukraine is a really important country in DHL network. It was absolutely critical, especially for Ukraine, to have a reliable connection. So we don't actually go into the road, so we don't actually hold on shipments for consolidation. So we kept on running. Unfortunately, it was possible 5 times per week from Ukraine to Leipzig. And from Leipzig, it's been connected to the rest of the network. And I will tell you, the particular case in Ukraine is that 1/3 of our volumes are connected with the clinical trials. These are very important, and obviously, there's very important missions within the clinical trials, and, those are samples of blood of those, who may have cancer, and, all these cases, they had to be quickly transferred to the laboratories in Europe and also in US. Fortunately, we have seen no disruption at all. We operated 5 times per week. And then, because on Saturday, we use always subcontractors, commercial air for Saturday pickup, which is also very important. Unfortunately, there was no solution. We are not seeing any regular flights coming into Boryspil for us to be able to use the Saturday flights. So the decision was taken that we will add additional flight. 6, so to increase it to 6 times per week. Unfortunately, not that easy. Now we're into negotiation with Ukrainian authorities and also German authorities. Well, they're basically negotiation now between Ukrainian and German authorities who give what and when and to whom. But hopefully this will be resolved in the next couple of weeks, and we will be able to be fully back on our pre-COVID schedule, like ability to transfer shipments from Ukraine 6 times per week. And one really important thing about, we're still looking, at the end of the day, obviously we'll come to the end of the COVID. Yes, it will come. One day is it going to be next year or whatever can trigger, the release of this situation. We're still looking at Kiev Boryspil Boryspil as actually a transit hub for the Caucasus, for Central Asia. That's been in the air for a while. There were a few constraints, and one of them was actually the lack of the proper facilities in Boryspil, and we're talking now about the cargo warehouse, right? And now the good news is, at least that's what we heard in the ministry, that the decision's been taken, and actually the loan is which I understood is committed for the construction of the new cargo terminal in Boryspil. This will be a really important milestone, because we know that Boryspil already, well, at least till March, was a transit hub for the passenger flights. And for us, it was really, ideal situation, when you combine, when you can actually put your volumes on the regular flights, which were sufficient, in terms of the number of the rotations, and then basically covered all the destinations that we needed, like Almaty, Yerevan, Tbilisi, Baku. We had a certain amount of the transit already for those countries. Interesting that we were preferred transit point for those countries as alternative to Istanbul, to Moscow. We were found to be easier to work with, because whenever you have transit, you will have issues, and it's a matter how quickly you can resolve these issues. Unfortunately, all this being suspended, and now the question is, how long will it take for the now regular flights to all these destinations actually to be restored, and to what scope? So basically 2 things that we need to start investing also into Boryspil as a transit hub will depend on this too. Available facility, which we understand that should be up and running, to be realistic, maybe in 2 years. For the commercial air, it's really important for us, and there's still no clear picture, when these lines will be restored. It's easy to switch off, switching on doesn't always go that smoothly. But that's our vision. Otherwise, we're seeing the volumes, especially June, July, well, they started really picking up. We're currently at 20%, above last year, which is already a good sign. Also take into account that other commercial airlines started flying, taking more stuff, but still, obviously, the activity connected with the cargo movement is resuming. But talking about the lowest point we had to go through, it was April. That was just below last year, which is by the industry standards is actually not a bad performance at all. So, I mean, this is from my side. Well, thanks God, we're here. Ukraine was connected. Everything urgent in and out of the country was delivered. There's been most, sometimes most amazing requests that we're receiving. Well, say the motto of our company is connecting people, improving lives, but we had a few cases that basically were about saving lives, and fortunately we were able to complete these missions. So that's it from my side, Andrei.
Thank you, Vadim. So very interesting presentation indeed, and I have some questions to ask. So if you
sure.
Switch off the screen sharing would be great. Thank you. So the first question. So DHL is operating out of Boryspil. So is it possible to consider another airport as a hub for DHL?
Well, I would tell you, Boryspil. Well, we've tried. Now the thing is that obviously having one airport is not enough, and then always to have additional airports. Well, let's say like Zhytomyr, but believe me or not, you cannot offload Boeing 737 in Zhytomyr. It doesn't have actually the technical equipment to offload containers from the Boeing 737. And when 2 years ago, Boryspil was closed for the incoming materials, we've tried to use Zhytomyr, and it was too big to everyone's surprise. Yes, well, you can land it there, but nobody can, they cannot take your containers off the, so as simple as that. But I would tell you, Boryspil will be actually our focus airport because for the transit, because I really see the big potential for Ukraine to becoming the transit hub for the Caucasus and Central Asia, because from all points of view, it's a direct line, especially from Europe. So that's why, and we always will depend, on these destinations. Majority of these destinations, of course, will depend on the commercial air. So there will be always a good portion of our cargo on those commercial flights.
Oh, thank you. Another question, Vadim. So basically, DHL as a cargo airline probably was hit the list of the not so heavily like any other passenger airlines. So do you feel like even growing demand from electronic online retail platform such as Amazon or whatever, AliExpress, any other retail platform to be increasing the volumes of cargo delivering through DHL or any other cargo airline?
Well, obviously it's global. Yes, globally, e-commerce went up, right? As you know, we're not cheap. Well, basically, because all this, supporting this own network of aircrafts obviously costs more money than just uploading, to commercial air or using air trucks. So our position is in a premium segment. Yes, it did grow. But what is actually amazing that the demand for this stuff that actually from Ukraine to the rest of the world has actually went up by 60%. So I mean, this is always, there not much of the official statistics that you can see on the e-commerce from Ukraine, not into Ukraine, because when we're talking about e-commerce, we think about it's, so shipments from China or shipments from US, from Amazon or UK, whatever, right? But nobody actually thinks that Ukraine potential has been actually massively growing over the last couple months. What we have seen in some destinations like US, I think it's increased by 60% of our actually retailers selling through platforms like Amazon, and many of them even selling directly, which is for us, it's a fantastic sign, because for each of the airline, you want to balance, the amount of stuff you get into the country and make sure you fly out not empty, and vice versa. So this is actually, yes, but it's global. Like US is currently actually, it's one of the key issues we have now with the incredibly high demand in US for overseas shipping. So the more volumes coming now to US, from the online platforms than from the US, which has been very unusual.
Vadim, do you see any growing competition from the passenger airlines converting their passenger aircraft to cargo? Like, is it something that you need to consider, or?
Well, it is something that is being considered. There will be, yes, obviously, as we have seen also in the previous presentation, the number of the idle aircraft at the moment, and for many it will be actually, for many of the passenger airlines, obviously it will be a solution that somebody buys them and converts them into the freighters, and that's what's already happening. And as I said, I was just now on the call with CEO, and this is one of the top priorities, to actually maximize the opportunity to convert passenger aircraft into the freighters.
I see. Okay, so Vadim, thank you very much for your time. It
yes,
was really very interesting.
Very welcome.
Again, looking forward to see you soon.
Cheers. Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Bye. And we are letting the floor for our next speaker.
Yes, hello. Let's see if it works here. Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Lucas.
Perfect.
How are you doing?
Hi. Good. Very good.
So the floor is yours. Just could you introduce yourself and
yeah, of course. Thanks for this, and thanks for all these great presentations prior to mine. My name is Lucas Levi, and I'm a psychologist working for Aon Assessment Solutions Sweden. And I'm going to talk for the coming 15 minutes about assessing applicants in the aviation industry after COVID-19. I believe recruitment and applicants is not the top priority at this moment, but there will be a day after this, and that's what I'm going to try to focus on. And I'm going to start just shortly about who we are, my organization, and then what can be the potential changes that we see after COVID-19 to how we recruit and assess applicants. And what I could see are a few potential solutions to these changes, and then we'll finish up with some questions in the end. So about us, as I said, I'm working for a global organization called Aon, and I'm part of the assessment solution, and we call ourselves a global online assessment partner. And the team I'm working with, we're globally around 500 colleagues, mainly psychologists, researchers, IT specialists, and similar. And we're currently assessing 30 million applicants per year from more than 90 countries. And you see here up in the top of the slide some of our tests. And these are, some of you may have done it when you've applied for a job, that you do some personality or ability tests. And that's mainly what we do. We help organizations to recruit and also to develop people. And we have more than 50 different tests. And this gives us an opportunity to have tests suited for different roles, like pilot tests or specific tests for cabin crew, ATC, retail associates, programmers, etc. Basically, any kind of job you could have. And you're doing them online from home on your phone, for example, with a short completion time, and with candidate reports and everything to make sure that there's a good experience of it. And for aviation industry, we have a test battery that's been validated against other tests like PILAT and CompC, etc. And they're also following the IATA and EASA guidelines. And what we like to do is to do many validation studies, and some of them within aviation, to see what can we predict and how, not only looking for general research, which is of course important, but also to look into what can we find here. And we're moving over a little bit. Here is how it could look like for a pilot. We have on the left spatial orientation. In the middle, we have multitasking capability, and then we have auditory comprehension. So these are some of the tests that you could do as if you're applying as a pilot. And we're working with a lot of different organizations, as I said, and many of them within aviation, more than 100 of them, both training schools and also airline operators. And you see here in the bottom some of the studies we've done, what we found. And for example, we have found that we can reduce the fail rate in the simulator by choosing applicants with a high score in our tests. We can also save time and costs by reducing the time to hire time to spend for hire. We also have an example for an aviation, the aviation industry with improved retention. And the last one here is what we've seen is less overconsumption of fuel for bus drivers, which is quite interesting. So different kind of studies based on what our clients are interested in predicting when they're hiring new people. So here are some of my thoughts regarding what's going to be like assessing applicants after or during COVID-19, not now probably, but in some future. I believe it's going to become more important to be able to assess applicants virtually. It will be harder to motivate on-site assessment and unnecessary human interactions. And that's something we're seeing already with the airlines we're working with, that they want to have something they can do from home or virtual to assess people in a good way. I also believe it will become increasingly more important to be able to handle large recruitment volumes while maintaining a high quality process. As we know, a large amount of former employees will apply when new positions become available, because there are going to be a lot of people that are interested in finding a new job. At the same time, EASA regulations requires psychological assessment for flight crew members, and cost reduction and cost control will be even more important than it is today for any airline operator. Last thing I think is that the behavioral success profile will change. And I'm mainly talking here about pilots, but this is actually true also for all kind of roles within an airline, the operators or cabin crew, etc. New demands requirements will require new behavioral competencies for various roles. So what are potential solutions here? I believe what we do could be something, online assessment done from home at an early stage. See an example here on the right side. I believe there for pilots will be less on-site assessment with this half-day assessment of a psychologist doing it face-to-face. It will be more of having algorithms with tests done from home that you could do once again on-site. But all this to create more efficiency in the process and looking more to the data and the predictions they have. And it will be more administered by airline operators themselves, enabled by these kind of tests. I also believe like virtual assessment centers will be something we're seeing already, becoming more common, that you're going to be able to assess people with interviews and exercises, etc., done from home. And the last thing here is video interviewing, which I think will increase as well, which we'll see an example from. And when we then have our pilots in there rehired, a good question is, why do we need to assess them again? They've already worked. And I think here it's important to talk about managing risk, which is crucial within aviation. We don't need to only find top performers. I prefer to look at it that we don't want to hire the underperformers. And I think all of you, wherever you're working, you know that some of your colleagues are outstanding top performers. Most are average performers, and then we have some that are not performing. These are the ones we want to avoid when we start to hire again. And I think especially if looking to research, pilots with limited experience, we can see quite big differences. With more experience, it's more about behavioral, being a captain, leading others. But in general, with less experience, it's even more important to actually assess them, although they worked before. And this is an example of what I think the future could look like. This is our new solution for video interviewing with help of AI. And this is the way where you have a question, you give your answer by recording yourself. And this is then based on what you're saying, what you're saying is going down to text, and which is analyzed by the AI. Which is then linked to certain behaviors, the words you're using. If I'm saying I'm happy, that may indicate that I'm a positive person. And all this is analyzed by the AI to very quickly analyze and see if this is a suitable candidate for the job, to make it time efficient and cost efficient. Of course, and this is an example that we have from the aviation industry from before COVID. where we could see that we had a client that wanted to improve efficiency and accuracy in the recruitment of cadets while maintaining validity and reliability. They wanted to have someone doing a good job, but it took too much time. They had about 13,000 applicants. So they wanted to reduce the cost for this. The solution was that we had our standard test, but also the artificial intelligence to assess the candidate's speech content and personality. And what you could see here was that we could reduce about 6,500 hours of evaluation time from the HR, which of course was saving a lot of money, but also really very good accuracy. So 86% of the time, the AI was able to do the same job as you, an expert, in assessing this, but at a much higher pace.
Lucas, may I ask you the question right now from the audience? Yeah. Well, basically, the human resources and the selection of the personnel, it is very, very important thing.
Yeah.
And the question is, right now the airlines are trying to reduce the operational costs by any means possible.
Yeah.
So one of them is they are reducing the human resource department. Basically, it's there is no reasons to have the human resource or recruiters, because you are no longer a recruit.
Yeah.
But do you think that these online screening and assessment tools might support the airlines in that case? Because when you start recruiting, you need to find the new pilots or cabin crews or any other personnel, and you are not ready because you've been cutting HR departments heavily.
Yeah, I believe so. When you're starting to hire again, this is a way to take this example here, 6,500 hours. That's a lot of time to spend from HR, which can be saved by online assessment of some sort. So I believe, yes, it could help the organizations when they need to start hiring again, to save time and also money.
Do you see, like right now the airlines become more, well, if they are recruiting now, we're talking about the recruitment, if they are recruiting, they became more picky in a way, like there is a huge demand, not demand, but supply for the pilots. I mean, unemployment is extremely high. So do you see that they increase the threshold?
Yeah, certainly, and I think this is a way where we can get benefit from assessing at an early stage, because we have many to choose from, and it's very hard to say in an early stage who is a well-suited candidate. If you have 2 hours interview with every candidate, that could be one thing, but we don't have the time when we have 1,000 applicants. So I think they are becoming more picky, and they see a bigger advantage of using online assessment of some sort when they have so many applicants to choose from, and they need to have a first cutoff to see who are we gonna look into more. We don't have time to look into all these candidates and their personal letter and everything.
I see. So do you have any recommendation for the pilots? Because probably they're looking our presentation now, how to get ready for these assessments, or is it possible to get ready? Or another part of the question is, if you've been laid off as a pilot, so probably for the long period of time, so do you need to be tested again by the airline before they call you again?
I believe I'm not sure how every airline is going to do that. So it depends. I believe some organizations will do that. Some may not. If you're going back to your same organization as before and they were happy, I don't think it's necessary perhaps. But especially for those that are from other organizations, they may need to be reassessed. And in regards to how to prepare, I believe many of pilots have done this kind of tests before. And a good thing is, of course, to always, when you are going to do the test, make sure that you're reading the instructions carefully. Take time. You always have sample questions you can walk through. Make sure that you're that you have eaten and that you have been sleeping well. But it's not that easy to prepare too much. Otherwise, I would say on top of that, but just do your best.
I see. Well, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. So I believe this is my last slide here on the future behavioral profile. And I believe this is for everyone working within aviation, that in the short term, I think it's going to be more important to be conscientious and follow guidelines and policies to ensure a safety environment for passengers and co-workers. Due to COVID, we can't just skip the rules that we have. It's very crucial that we follow all the guidelines that are there. And in the short and also longer term, I believe what was mentioned in the first presentation, adaptability, will become more important for all jobs within aviation as for most other workers. That's something we saw already before COVID, but I think it's going to be even more now because today is changing all the time. All these technological advancements and new rules, guidelines requires people to continuously learn new skills and develop at a higher pace. We can't just rely on old knowledge. We need to always learn new things, how to use Zoom, for example. But everything, I think every kind of role is going to be affected by this.
By the way, Lucas, do you think that the airlines or airports or any other industry player soon will require some new features or new skills to be assessed after the COVID?
Yeah, I believe that, as I said here, what we call future readiness with learnability, agility, and curiosity, or called adaptability to summarize, I believe that is going to be more important to assess than before. In the short term, being conscientious, that's always important, but even more. But adaptability to learn new things is going to be more important when organizations start to hire again.
I see. And in regard of support of, let's say, Ukrainian language, do you have this kind of a solutions for like the native speakers, not like who's fluent in English or something?
We have it in our some tests in over 40 languages. We have it in Russian, for that I know. I'm not sure how many we have in Ukrainian, for example, but what we usually do is that when we have a new client to start using the test, we can ensure to translate instructions. So if that is crucial, then it's something. But we have for more than 40 languages our tests translated currently, and more and more all the time.
I see. Thank you, Lucas, very much. So it was really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. So if you have questions, please email me at lucas.levi@aon.se, because if you come up with questions later, feel free to send me an email if you want to know more.
We have a list of questions we will send you after the presentation. So thank you, Lucas, very much, and we're leaving the floor to our next speaker. Thank you. Hi, Stein. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can barely hear you. Can you increase your microphone volume or sit closer to the mic?
What about now? Is the audio better?
Yeah, now it's much better. It's way better.
Perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you to all the great speakers today for sharing their insights and interesting information. It's for the next 15 to 20 minutes, what I'm going to talk about is the pilot demand post-COVID-19. And as you can see here on the subtext, will the short-term surplus lead to a long-term shortage? A somewhat rhetorical question that I think most of you tuning in today has the answer to. There's no doubt that this will have an effect on our ability to attract talent to the industry. So my presentation today will focus on these main points. We're going to look at the pre-corona pilot demand, just to put it into context somewhat. Historical recovery patterns as well, and that ties quite naturally into the post-corona pilot demand, and probably even more importantly, what are the key initiatives that we as an industry can do to minimize the impact or the negative impact on our ability to secure the talent that we need to have a safe and efficient aviation industry in the continuation. And finally, I'd like to wrap up the presentation on a slightly more positive note, to look a little bit at the new and emerging opportunities and try to imagine some potential ways that we can tie into this to enable us to both attract but also retain some of the amazing people that we have in the industry today. Okay, so just first and foremost, I think, this is no news, but I'd just like to say that the outbreak is a human tragedy. It affects hundreds of thousands of people, having a tremendous impact on the global economy and the aviation industry in particular. So with that said, I also think that it's incredibly uplifting to see the resilience and the resolve that people are showing, in the medical field, in our industry, and so many other places around the world, to try and to counteract and to battle the effects that this pandemic is having on us all. For us, tens of thousands of our industry colleagues have been laid off as a result of the virus, and this dictates the need for decisive actions to preserve the talent, as I said, in our industry, and also to attract new talent as well. And if I were to ask this question in November of last year, as recent as that, is there a demand for pilots? The answer would be a resounding yes. It's a huge need, and we were experiencing as an industry that we were not quite able to meet that need and the predicted need that we were foreseeing. I'm sure that some of you are familiar with this graphic coming from Boeing and their market outlook of last year, where they dictated a global need until 2038 of 804,000 pilots. And obviously the Asia Pacific region, with a incredibly rapidly growing middle class, and what was leading the way here, but even mature markets such as Europe and North America were predicted to have a quite substantial need for new pilots. And for us as an ATO, we were obviously benefiting from this, because the next generation were looking at our industry and they were thinking there's promise here. There's going to be job security here. This is a good career choice, not just because I want to fly airplanes, but because I'll have work for the foreseeable future. Obviously, that's very important to those who are looking at our industry from the outside and wanting to move in. Airbus was very aligned as well with Boeing, and I do realize that both of these companies, apart from being industry leaders, they are also have a lot of incentives to be vocal about a pilot need and ensuring that enough pilots are being educated, because if there are not enough pilots being trained, it's going to be increasingly difficult for them to sell aircraft. They made the point of the industry having a compound annual growth rate of 5.5%, and as you well know, the past 5 years have been the most profitable years in the airline industry, or in the history of the airline industry. In more or in simpler terms, Airbus was predicting the fleet to double over the next 15 years to close to 44,000 aircraft. Obviously, that's not the reality anymore. Most likely, we are seeing a early retirement of entire aircraft types, and the picture will definitely be different. But if we look at it historically, the aviation industry outperformed gross domestic product by twice as much, which is well done, so to speak. So this was all in the past. This was all last year. And if we look even further into the past, the aviation industry has proven to be resilient. We've managed to get through oil crisis, wars, the Asian crisis, and terrorist attacks of 9/11, of which at the tail end of that, we also went through the SARS epidemic. Now, this was not as predominant in Europe and North America as it was in the Asia Pacific region, and especially so in China. And then after that, we also went through a world recession. And I think that, this information from ICAO looking into the rearview mirror also was able to underline the fact that this is an industry that is not immune to external factors. Obviously, we're quite vulnerable to them, but very, very capable of being resilient and getting through it although there is some turbulence during those times. Now, ICAO released some insights, some very valuable insights here over the summer, and just so we have this, are aligned on the terms, the layman terms here to describe these. A V-shaped recovery is the normal shape for a recession. A brief period of sharp decline followed by a quick and smooth recovery. Now, there you have the U-shape, which is a prolonged contraction, the L-shape, which is a depression where it flattens out at the bottom. And then what some are predicting that we will see here, if we get a second wave, a W-shaped double dip recession, where it goes up and down before the full recovery. And I'd like to just to put it into context here, looking at the past, here you'll see what I mentioned, that the North American Airlines, illustrated by the pink line, was not as affected by SARS as the China domestic market. But as you can see on the side note here, the impact of COVID-19 has already surpassed the SARS outbreak, and it has reduced annual RPKs by 8%, about $6 billion in revenues for Asia Pacific Airlines. The 6-month recovery path of SARS might not apply to today's situation, it says, and I think that we can state that with confidence that it will not look the same way. It will drag out for a longer time, and the recovery, many industry and thought leaders are predicting the economy or the recovery to be somewhat staggered. There are a lot of variables going into this. There are a lot of unknowns still. And it's great to see, you know, Qatar, all the other airlines, and also IATA being so vocal about the need for harmonization and also taking action to achieve that. I think it's very, very important, and it's very uplifting to see that all of these things are being said and communicated. And I think that will definitely help us. So that makes me happy to witness and to listen to all of these voices talking right now. The 9/11 and global financial crisis had a U and L-shaped impact in the US, as we can see here, illustrated by the revenues. And you know, it's anybody's guess how the recovery of COVID-19 will look like. Some are saying that this pandemic will be 9/11 meets the financial crisis meets something else, and there's a lot of guesswork going on. I think that we all can agree that it will be tough, and the actions that we take will be extremely important for a healthy, sustainable recovery, where we get slowly but steadily back to where we want to be. Now, one of the uplifting things to see here, and is if we look to China, that's been dealing with this for the longest period of time, is that they bottomed out mid-February and then followed by a slow pace of recovery. But it is uplifting to see that it's going upward. Now, capacity obviously is not the same as profitability. We also need to make sure that enough people want to travel to fill the planes as well. But the arrows are pointing in the right direction. I thought it was very interesting to listen to Mr. Sidurik from DHL and all the challenges that they've been going through with the cargo segment. But in contrast to the fall in passenger traffic, cargo flights have surged. But it's very interesting to see that there are other challenges that comes with that growth, with the growth in e-commerce and with the lacking capacity that used to be there from passenger traffic. So lots of unknown challenges have surfaced over these past few weeks and months. It's both interesting to listen to and uplifting to see that these challenges are met. It makes me think very positively of the future. So let's move to now. Let's look at the pilot demand right now. And the answer to this one is quite obvious. Lucas mentioned it. It's not a lot of screening going on and hiring going on right now. And this for us as an ATO, as a flight school, is the most critical challenge to meet, because we have a lot of students that are graduating in the midst of all this. And flying a plane and having the skills required of being a professional pilot, it's not like riding a bike. You really have to keep your skills, your knowledge fresh. And I would say that one of the important things that training organizations also need to achieve is to be that support function, that framework for dialogue between graduates, between the training organization and graduates, and between the connecting link between employers and pilots, because being able to have that conversation is going to have a positive impact on their ability to maintain motivation, because that's something that we really need to keep in mind. It's going to be important that we get people to stick around long enough to enable them to maintain their skills, their ratings, their licenses, and their knowledge, so that once recruitment picks up again, they will still be airline ready. It's vital for the airlines, it's vital for us as the ATO, it's vital for the pilots themselves, it's critical for the entire industry. And that's a challenge that we need to meet together, in my opinion. I've spoken a lot to our students over the past few weeks. I'm very impressed with the resilience that they're showing. And I'm expecting and hoping that we won't lose too much talent throughout this whole thing. Because for me and for us as a flight school, we were not competing only against other flight schools. We're getting that bonus that we've always had with the fact that this profession is something that many people dream of. It's something that they really want to do. It has a unique mix of academics and practicality. You get to travel the world, and it's has an enticing effect on our ability to attract people to our industry. But we are competing against, becoming a programmer, becoming a lawyer, becoming a doctor, all these other professions that also have a good earning potential, and you could argue somewhat better stability. They're not as cyclical as the aviation industry is. So it's important for us to keep that top of mind and use that as motivation to communicate and to attract talent to our industry, because we really, really need it for when the upturn comes again. We're faced, like I said, we have retirement of entire fleets these days, early retirements at that, A380, 747, the MD-80. Many airlines are retiring their fleets earlier than they normally would have done if we didn't have this pandemic. And this is something, along with the bankruptcies and those things, that figure very clearly in the media. This leads to counter marketing or to negative marketing for us that are trying to go out there and say that this is a great job. Obviously, if we would be doing that now without acknowledging the fact that there are challenging times, we would be completely disconnected from the people that we're trying to talk to. So it's important for us that we're honest but enthusiastic in the way that we communicate with people. And I think, moving forward, the aviation industry, we're expecting to see consolidations. Even before the pandemic, we were expecting to see that. And in other words, fewer but bigger airlines. I think something that is also likely to happen is that we will have new airlines emerging. The opportunity for slot times, qualified crews, and some airlines are laying off crew is at an unprecedented high. And I expect, in Sweden we have it's not a new airline, but it's called Air Leap. They've been around for a while, and they are doing a lot now to grow, because for them, because of the lower activity from some other airlines, and they see an opportunity, and they're trying to meet that, rise with that opportunity, meet that need, and I think that we will see some more of that as well. And that's good. I think that's really positive, especially for us who are trying to attract people to go into the training programs that we offer. Increased capacity, reopened routes is an important step in the right direction. As some of the other speakers have pointed out, we also need to convince passengers that it's safe to travel, and slower recovery than expected, at least so far, has illustrated that this is a tough challenge, but I think it's a challenge that we are consecutively becoming better and better and better at meeting. And that's really, really good. Air travel and air cargo make up such a vital part of our infrastructure and economies. And I say that in particularly here in Sweden and also in Norway. We are lucky to have airline support, or government supporting our airlines. I think it was Mr. Bundle who said that there was no real support, at least from the government in his region. But in Norway and Sweden, we're seeing more of that support. I think it's because here the aviation is such a vital part of the infrastructure, both for air ambulance flights, but also for connecting the country. But I realize that this also creates an imbalance in the greater market. Some countries support their airlines, others don't, and that creates differences. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. For ATO, one of the key initiatives is to enable, like I said, we need to enable our candidates to maintain the knowledge, the skills, the motivation to stick with it through this crisis, so they're airline ready on the other side. And I think that this, in turn, is also one of the vital initiatives to be able to attract new talent into our industry, because as you know, the word of mouth is incredibly important to attract pilots, because today in this world, they're connected now more than ever. They will be talking to each other, they will be asking questions. And if we don't take good care of those that are trapped in the vacuum that this pandemic is causing in terms of recruitment, that's going to be a major turnoff for potential new talent into our industry. One of the most important initiatives for us here at OSM Aviation Academy has been Project Resilience. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback on this, and basically one of the most important parts of Project Resilience is that our students that have graduated last year and this year are able to come back to the school once every 2 months to spend 3 hours in the Boeing 737 simulator together with another student, and to train their skills to fly approaches, to do departures, to work on their CRM, to get that practical training. Obviously, we encourage them to do flight sim at home as well, but it's not quite as good as being in the 737 that we have here on site. So it's been really appreciated. They really like this, and it will help them to keep their skills fresh. I mentioned already, we're competing across.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. So we are really running out of time. So I would like to ask you one question, maybe two, if you allow. So right now, really, the demand for the pilot is decreasing, and probably it will stay as low as it is now for quite a long time. So you, as the professional that is responsible for producing or training new employees for the industry, what advice would you give for those potential candidates or pilots that are willing to enter the industry? Is it worth going, or maybe you just pick another occupation?
I think obviously I'm somewhat biased. I still think it's a good idea to pursue this profession, and I'll explain why. I think that for those that are graduating right now, it's a tough situation. For those that are starting now, I hopefully will be in a good place already in 2022. Maybe not full recovery, but starting your pilot education in a downturn has historically been a good idea, because you're ready for the upturn when the recruitment starts again. In addition, I think that there are new exciting parts or new segments of the industry that's growing, that hasn't been there before, amongst other things, the urban air mobility, the air taxi. I think for the shorter distances, being enabled to where we can fly on electric planes, obviously that's somewhat into the future, and it's not going to be transatlantic or anything like that, but that will open up new markets that will have a need of their own that we haven't considered in the past.
Okay, thank you. So, Sten, and the last question, what would be your message to the airlines or to other stakeholders of aviation industry from the position of a training organization? What would be like the message for now?
I think the most important thing, and I think the area where we've not been very in good synergy as an industry, is to establish connections with your local training organizations. Make sure that you have a conversation with them. Make sure that you share resources with them, and that you have those conversations. Because if we can connect that bridge, that will enable us to together attract the right talent, the people with the propensity to succeed as professional pilots into the industry. So collaborate with training organizations, tell them what you need, tell them when they don't deliver the way that you expect, and having that interaction will professionalize everything.
Thank you, Sten, very much for a very interesting presentation. Hope to see you again, and stay safe.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so we are giving the floor to our new presenter.
Hello, Andre. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
How
Hi.
are you? You're right.
Yes, we are very fine. We are like in a real marathon. We are running for a very long time, a little bit tired, but keep on running.
Don't worry. I've actually decided, just because to make it a bit more interactive, it will be interesting to just get questions from you. I run an aviation consultancy company. I work for airports, airlines, and ground handlers. So by any means, if my experience can be of service in analyzing how COVID has changed the way we are flying or we are not flying, by any means, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Yes. So Enzo, the first question, actually, is there any ways or is it any possibility to make the airport operations safe without decreasing the passenger flow?
Right. Well, I try to be a bit provoking in giving you this answer. Well, yes. And you know why? Because unfortunately, the demand is very low. Today, the airports are still very empty. Yes, I've heard a lot of colleagues before me saying that there is a recovery in place. The recovery is there, but still nobody is actually presenting data showing the load factor of the airlines. So yes, flights are resuming, operations are resuming, but at a much lower capacity. The aircrafts are there, seats are still very empty. Hence, one of the most challenging issues for the next months will be to actually stimulate demands. And allow me to say, I would pretty much agree with a Harvard professor, Kenneth Rogoff, is saying, well, until there is no sense on when COVID-19 will be defeated, then in that case, it's going to be very difficult to predict a recovery. Yesterday and today, we have seen ACI and IATA to agree that the recovery will be in 2024 compared to the same level 2019. Now, until 2 months ago, the majority of these entities and bodies were forecasting 2022. So I don't want to be pessimistic, but we need to be very conscious that until COVID is killed and until economy and demand resume, aviation will be at the bad end of the road.
I see. Okay, so just to follow this question, Italy was hit badly, probably one of the most hit country in Europe by COVID. So, to your opinion, what was done wrong? I mean, in Italy, and what was done right? So, what would be your
Let's say there has been probably too much reactivity and not too much proactivity. And in a sense, it had to be expected. Aviation, by definition, is one of the industry where there is less capability of planning long terms for the nature of the beast itself. Now, a crisis like COVID could be hardly be foreseen. On the other hand, we have seen that airlines, airports weren't ready for a pandemic, weren't ready for a crisis like this. So I have to say that in Italy, we've seen where we've been the guinea pig of this situation. We've been the first to be hit so hard. COVID has been, and sorry if it still sounds a bit provoking, COVID has been a real effective regulator of the airport systems in Italy. So in March, as soon as the government has adopted emergency measures, the majority of regional airports have been closed. The biggest hubs have kept open, and in a sense, we couldn't have done anything else. There was no airlines flying, there was no capacity. On the other hand, it's been the first time that we have noticed that probably the catchment areas of regional airports conceived in 1 hour, 1.5 hour, well, they now need to be enlarged. We probably have to have less airports. Probably we need to be ready to travel a bit more with the car, trains, and other means to reach our airport of choice. So again, there has been a lot of reactivity, not much proactivity. But what have we done differently? Looking at how the other EU countries have followed suit, probably we have not been too bad.
I see. Taking into account what is the current operation nature of the airport, and from the one hand, and from the other hand, the restrictions that are being put by, I don't know, by regulators or by any other authorities, is it possible for the airports to keep the balance between making profit out of the passenger traffic and at the same time, well, following all the restrictions?
Well, the airports will struggle financially. They are struggling financially, probably not as much as the airlines, but essentially what we're going to see are big private investments funds, infrastructure funds managing the airports, starting to ask themselves serious questions about the durability of their investments. Are we going to stay? Are we going to keep investing for the next 5 years in new terminals, in new operations? Or are we going to sell our stake? I wouldn't be surprised to see in the next year or so, particularly with the regional airports, a trend where the airports management and boards will embody a lot of public tourism organizations. I've heard a couple of colleagues before hoping that more collaboration is established. That's absolutely paramount to re-stimulate demand, to have tourists back in your airports, in your region. Well, you need to hear many different voices. The traditional airports, airlines dealings, arm's length, adversarial, negotiating the airport charges, and it would be a very reductive way to see the recovery. We won't see the recovery if there isn't a substantial change in the way business is done. But airports, to answer your questions, in the next 2 years, well, we lose money compared to their original planning. This will reflect in capacity and possibility of investing in infrastructures. And rightly so. The airlines shouldn't receive the hit of the airports that is charging back to the airlines investments that today are not necessary any longer. What is necessary, of course, are the health and safety infrastructure investments. They need to be done, they need to be put in place in order to guarantee that minimum security and safety that together with an economic growth will re-stimulate flight demand.
Do you think that the airports are contributing sufficiently towards the security, I mean, this corona-wise security of the passengers? Because really right now in Europe, if you just take a flight to whatever country back and forth, you will see that all these precautions in regard of this disease is more like, how to say it in the right word, is more like playing something that is really no one believes in. So are those precautions really efficient? And I don't know, are they effective?
I think you have to have a dual layers of considerations to answer these questions. The airports have an obligation to guarantee that on arrival, no COVID cases are coming into their respective countries. In order to do so, as instructed by the various governments, or ICAO, or EU in case of European flights, they need to guarantee that passengers don't have temperature, that they respond to the minimum requisites, i.e. masks, gloves, and obviously traceability. You need to know where the passenger is flying from, is he taking interconnecting flights, what is his final destination. In that respect, I think we are equipped. But the most important thing is to guarantee as well the wealth of the airlines by ensuring that passengers don't go on board in a status of danger or already infected or already positive passengers. So we have seen that that didn't really work much well in certain countries. To keep and stick to the example of Italy, in the last 3 weeks, we have seen a number of flights from India and from Bangladesh, or interconnecting flights from Bangladesh and India, bringing in an incredible number of passengers that were positive. So in that sense, clearly, we cannot afford the loopholes in safety and security measures. I have to say, what we have seen in the last 3 months has been a lot of confusion. We've seen ACI, ICAO, IATA, governments, EU coming at different times, never at the same time, with different recommendations and with a tremendous and horrific possibility for the single nations to taint those guidelines, to reflect their own ideas. This has created an incredible uncertainty, particularly in the airlines. Last example, the latest closure of the borders, or better to say, the quarantine imposed by the UK governments to all the travelers to Spain. Well, the day after, we have seen EasyJet and Jet2 suspending their operations to Spain because they sell holiday packages and not only flights. So again, homogeneous measures would have helped much more the industry.
Enzo, do you think that these measures might be limited by, let's say, European Union borders? And that will create, and it's already creating, this a sort of a safety bubble for the travel. It means that aviation industry, passenger travels will increase and will get back to normal to some word, but it won't be like international travels. Mm-hmm. We will be closed in our European Union bubble. This is it.
Yeah. Well, it is already like this, Andrei. US flights to Europe now have great limitations. The same applies to flights from China and Far East into Europe. Within Europe itself, if not in the EU, we already see limitations. In Italy, today, if you fly from Serbia or Macedonia, you can't fly in. So yes, there will be bubbles. Again, to go back to the previous questions, it's essential that the higher bodies, politically and health-wise, issue guidelines which are respected and taken care of by everybody, single state, airports, and airlines. But the bubble is already there today. We have seen that reflected into the passenger, into the cargo business. So yes, it's not a good thing to have. I would say it's unavoidable based on the lack of clarity in terms of guidelines that we have seen today.
Okay, thank you. What do you think about the way airports actually are earning money? I mean, duty-free shops in the airport, all these commercial activities. Right now, it seems like half open, half closed. You can't understand what is really going on. There is no like the general policies and then policies for operations of these retailers. So what is your opinion? Should airports take very harsh measures to suspend this commercial activity, or to make it in another way, or just let it go?
Well, again, it depends on the airports and on the country. Try to ask Venice Airport or Charles de Gaulle or Heathrow to close their commercial activities and to close their commercial field for a while, those airports might as well close entirely, because it's such the amount of commercial revenues that they bring in. Obviously, a measure like that would destroy the airports. Now, are the commercial revenues or the duty-frees COVID traps or potentially dangerous for the health of passengers? Well, with the correct measures, touchless measures, gloves, sanitizing, probably not. On the other hand, let's take a look at the small regional airports. Many of them have small duty-frees. The passengers as demand and demands and numbers have dropped dramatically. Does it make sense to keep those certain commercial activities open? Probably not. Better to focus on possibility to frozen or to keep employees in a dormant state, expecting a recovery of the industry itself.
I see. So the last question, Enzo, what is your opinion? What should be the synergy of like the major players of the industry, like airports, airlines, manufacturers, aircraft manufacturers, but let's focus on the synergy of airports and airlines. What is your opinion in regard of current challenges?
We should see a revolution in the way of dealing between airports and airlines in the next foreseeable future, and certainly under the threat of COVID. We should forget the arm's length adversarial approach. While I bring you 20,000 passengers, you drop your airport charges. I think what we should see is what I call a consortium forming. I would say the airports need to be a co-investor in the airline risk. I believe what we should see is sharing the revenues of commercial with the airlines that are introducing the passengers to the airports. So I would see airlines more and more selling the lounges of the airports on board, selling their products, giving vouchers or discounts for the duty-free, and I would see in return airports sharing the revenues, also the commercial with the airlines. It's no time, I would say, to go back to traditional regulated incentive for airlines. The states have already issued a cascade, enormous cascade of state aid on airlines and airports, and rightly so to a certain extent. Unfortunately, there has been a big layer of airlines not rewarded by this approach, which have been traditionally, I would say, the low cost or the non-state flag carriers, because they have always accounted for an incredible amount of commercial revenues because of their more flexible commercial approach. But I would say, to answer your question brutally, stop negotiations, put your hats together, work together in bringing back passengers to the airports and sharing the reward of this.
Thank you. So Enzo, I just need to ask you this question before I let you go. This crisis is killing the industry. It's obvious. So what is your prediction? How long will it last? I'm not mean the industry, the crisis.
Sure. Well, again, go back to what Stein said before. At the end of the day, the economists are of two kinds today, and there is the supporter of the U-shaped curve, so quick, deep recession and quick recovery, and the L-shape, drop and long, flat line. I'm a bit more of a supporter of the second category. I don't like to be one that supports a similar thing, but what I'm saying is flights are empty. They are recovering, they are starting again with recovering the assets from the lessors, but flights are still 20-25% lower than their normal load factors. The demand is not there. There is a 15% unemployment rate in Spain, 12% in Italy. Let's not talk about the Central European states belonging to the EU, where the situation is even worse. So if we don't put our hats together and get the demand back through a recovery of the economy, As I said, aviation and tourism will be the two industries that will struggle most.
I see. I absolutely agree with you, Enzo. Thank you very much for your interesting ideas and conversation. Thanks a lot. We are letting the floor for our next speaker. And meanwhile, Enzo, stay safe and let's keep in touch and hope to see you soon then.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Hi, David.
Hey there, how are you?
We are fine, we are fine. You are like the cherry on the cake.
Yeah, I'm last guy before people go for drinks. I don't
yes,
know.
Exactly.
I'm not sure. There we
yeah,
go.
So David, thank you for giving us the time, and the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. Look, I haven't heard all the speakers, but I just heard I think it's true what Enzo was saying a moment ago, that there's got to be a rethink at all levels. I mean, relationships between airports and airlines, just one example. It's always been a bit of a challenged relationship, an arranged marriage, shall we say? But you know, everyone's in this one together, and we're all in trouble. I guess we could be in the cruise ship industry, so it possibly could be worse. But it's not an easy time for anybody at any end of the aviation spectrum. So we'll do our best. I wanted to just go through the, I don't know if we put our slides up. Can you do that, or how are we doing that?
Well, actually, it would be nice if you could share your screen. I mean, share your presentation. Just run it.
Okay, I didn't know I was doing that, but let me see if I can manage that one. That would require me to be cleverer than I am, because I didn't set it up that way. 2 secs. Okay. Oh boy. Okay, let me close that down. Share screen, and then it's not very pretty because I assume you're seeing a lot of borderline around it, but I guess we'll have to make do. Share. Enable all features. Here we go. Is that working? Hopefully.
Not so much.
No,
Did
it's
you
not.
share? Yes.
Okay, good. Here we go. Okay, yeah. It's not many slides. I'm gonna go through them and I'll leave some time for questions. Basically, we're looking at the effect on the industry, and we're trying to share some of the experience. We are I'm not going to go into great detail about us, but we're a specialized aviation consultancy acquired by the PA Group a few years ago. PA Consulting Group out of London, but it's a global consultancy firm, and we are driving the aviation team, and our entire focus is people who are former aviation and airline executives who are working with our former colleagues in the industry to try to find solutions. These are the questions that were put to us. Scale of the crisis, airlines' ability to survive, and who will survive.
David, sorry to interrupt you. I think we're not we do not see your presentation, so okay. I will just share my screen just to support you.
Okay, so, no, wait. I think let me try this then. Tell me this is going to work. Okay, you got it. Good. Okay, if you've got it, that's fine. Please go ahead.
Yep. So I have it.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries at all. Which slide?
Okay. Well, we'll go on to the second slide now. Next slide. Yeah, just go down. I think, in fact, we just kind of touched on that. So, and we're just talking lastly about the Ukraine. What does that mean in more Ukrainian at a local level in the region of Eastern and Central Europe? Let's go down one more slide. I'm not going to talk about NIRIS. I'm sure that we can share this deck, and afterwards you're welcome to share with anybody who's interested. But let's continue one more slide if we could.
Sure.
Okay. What we're seeing, it's not, we'll get this, here we go. The first signs of recovery are starting to occur. And interestingly enough, in terms of traffic globally, we're seeing an intra-European market stronger than many other markets globally. And I think in a way that reflects some of the EU facilitation. Yes, there have been hiccups. Certainly we had one this week between the UK and Spain. And there are certain countries in the greater European area that are still quite closed off. Russia is closed off. Sweden is not being seen in the same manner as some of its neighbors. So we're seeing this, at a case-by-case basis, very much a bilateral basis. But if you look at it on a whole, intra-Europe is doing better. And this reflects a trend towards short-haul traffic, which we're seeing right now. The recovery seems to be coming in short-haul first, and it seems to be working very, very well in Europe because of the strong flows of both holiday, but also what we describe as VFR, visiting friends and relatives, as most people know. There's so much ethnic traffic, worker traffic, people who work in other parts of Europe who come, whether they come from the Ukraine or other countries or have family in one place or another. That traffic seems to be somewhat, I wouldn't say immune, but less impacted by the trends that are going on in globally, where basically it's still quite flatline and some markets are effectively shut down. If you compare it to intra-EU to EU North America, it's obviously far, far worse on the transatlantic markets. Let's continue on to the next slide. Part of it is, of course, driven by fear of flying, fear of long haul. But also what we're seeing is that what we describe as a very last minute booking curve. If you see the graph below, people tend to have a certain percentage of the plane, filled up 24 weeks in advance, 8 weeks in advance. And we're seeing right now a tremendous last minute booking curve. We have been on full flights. I was on a full flight actually this week between the Netherlands and the UK. It's almost disconcerting when you get on a full flight now, but it was a very short flight. I think you're seeing people, but a lot of those bookings pick up at the very last minute because people aren't sure about whether the rules will change. They don't want to make plans far in advance. So from a load factor point of view, things are improving. I suspect from a revenue point of view, that is not, the revenue is going to come back more slowly. We're also seeing this problem, of course, as I mentioned, in long haul. Long haul is more complex. There is a greater concern about being trapped, caught at the wrong side of the equation. And so you see the long haul carriers like Emirates and others are making tremendous efforts to engender the confidence of people, not just in their in-flight service, but also their hub stability, in the certainty of being able to return. And this type of development will probably continue as people rethink their product proposition and how they can continue to encourage people to basically get on the plane. Because right now the loads are very, very thin, and especially for a hub carrier, whether that hub is in Kiev or in Dubai or anywhere in Europe, there requires a critical mass of connections to make it all work. And because people don't want to be stuck sitting in an airport for hours and hours at the best of times, and certainly not right now. So getting these hubs restarted is a challenge, and we're seeing that going faster on the short haul connections, short and mid haul connections than we are on the long haul. It will be interesting to see how it develops once the summer holiday season is over, because people are now want to or need to take a break. It's been pretty stressful the last few months, and we are seeing people get on planes, but we don't know how that'll last past August or September. If we could go to the next slide. I think what is interesting though, and I know it's been touched on before, but we touched on, of course, short haul, but the short haul is partially based on familiarity and the ability to return them quickly, access to healthcare, but we're not sure that the weekend getaway that people, I'm going to go with my partner and just get on a plane and go to Paris for the weekend and go here or go there. That type of traffic might be more challenged. What we're really worried about, though, is the business end of the equation. There's a few reasons for that. The entire world, except for me, perhaps trying to get my presentation up, is being well trained on using Zoom and similar tools. Teams, Zoom, whatever. We're all getting used to this. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's going to suit every business environment. There are some deals, there are some that require face-to-face meetings, but the number of people who used to go for an internal meeting or get on a plane to go just to visit a customer casually, that has decreased. And even if there's a cure found tomorrow, a vaccine found tomorrow, there is an economic impact that'll probably far outlast the medical event. And so I don't think people realize, if we're also fortunate as to have a vaccine by the end of the year, it doesn't mean next year goes back to normal, because everybody, their economies, the people's jobs, the companies they work for, the budgets, every CFO in the world is going to be asking you, well, why can't you use Teams or Zoom for that job? And that's going to affect business travel. It's going to affect the front end of the cabin, which helps a lot of traditional airlines pay their way. And so I think we feel that the LCCs do have an advantage in that regard. They aren't as dependent on that mix of traffic. And that will continue, not just for the medical crisis, but also for the economic impact that will follow in the next couple of years, we suspect. We continue.
David, if I could
Sure,
ask
please.
you, if I could ask you the question, let's say, what is the most stress-resistant airline model right now? You mentioned LCC, low-cost carriers. Who will win the race now for the passengers?
Well, yeah, I think we can talk about this further. I think let's go to the next slide if we could. But I think let's to answer your question. I think LCCs, and you were just going there, so this is why you made this easy for me. The LCCs are, in theory, they're more advantaged. And I say in theory because of some distortions that are going on out there. The well-run LCCs, not all of them, but the well-run LCCs, the ones that are established, the Wizz Airs, the Ryanairs, and there's a few others who have a tremendous cost discipline, and they have significant cash reserves. Their ability to operate without or maintain themselves without carrying any passengers will extend much further than many of the traditional carriers. But they're also more focused on that VFR traffic we spoke about, the discount holidays that people might take on a relatively short flight, and because they don't focus on connecting passengers, people are going to be a bit anxious about getting on aircraft for a while until the medical situation is resolved or understood better. And therefore, the idea that I don't have to get on one plane, connect, get on another plane, and I can go from A to B to someplace pleasant that's not too far away. I don't have to sit in the plane too long next to that person who's 3 rows away who might be just coughing like any normal person would and nothing more than that. The anxiety associated with it is leans towards their model, and the financial stability leans towards their model. As I mentioned before, the full service carriers are more dependent on business travelers. They tend to be more long haul focused, which is the tougher part of the market to come back. But the distortion here is that the full service carriers are benefiting more than anybody from government recapitalization and loans and investment of some form or another. Especially we see that in Europe, less so in Latin America, less so in other parts of the world. So the question sometimes is whether in a truly Darwinian sense, whether the strongest will survive. If you have a very well-run carrier, but your competitor is benefiting from significant amounts of state aid, and we're talking about billions of euros and dollars and pounds, and so forth here, it's hard to compete no matter how well run you are. And that is where we say LCCs are well positioned, and that's the caveat.
David, in regard of state financial aid or support that European and global airline are receiving from the government, do you think it's justified to inject tons and tons of money into the business model that is not efficient?
I think you have to inject that money with, it can't come for free without a price, without a certain amount of discipline that you bring with it. It's naive to say that let the market be a free-for-all, because, you know, as much as, you know, I might believe that in a theoretical sense, I don't think these states, you know, we know how much of the French state is put in Air France, we know how much the German state is put in Lufthansa. It's just simply not, whatever we may believe personally, these airlines will continue. The question is whether you use this event to drive through change that makes these airlines more sustainable once this crisis is either behind us, or at least it's understood and it becomes part of the fabric in whatever the new world is going forward. Because the old model has shown its weakness at this huge, but you know, we've hit a huge bump in the road and we've seen the weakness of the old model. So, you know, just simply pumping money into an airline, no matter what. And I mean, I think we all know that there are some airlines like Alitalia that go on forever and nobody is quite sure, you know, it's not so much that the Italian government wants an airline. The question is what discipline, what benefit are we getting from our reinvestment in those carriers? And that is a concern for anybody, whether you're a taxpayer or a competitor.
I see. Okay, thank you. I have a lot of questions, so
sure, go on. We only got a couple more slides, then I'll let you.
Yeah, super. Go ahead.
Okay, go on one more slide. And looking at the Ukraine, I mean, there is no market that in the last 10 years has you know, that really stands out more in Europe. It came to the party a bit later than some of the other Central European nations, but the openness of the Ukraine as a market and the benefits that have been derived in terms of the consumer benefit and the benefit that competition even puts on the established carriers, the idea that it forces that discipline, it forces improvements in the way they run, the way airlines run, and the way airports run, the way everybody in the business works together. You can really see it here, and I think I just brought this slide up, it's stunning, and you see this even now post-COVID. I think Wizz Air announced about 14 new routes to and from the Ukraine, so we don't think the market's, you know, it's going to be a tough year ahead, there's no question about it, but we think compared to where we were 10 years ago, that change is permanent. There might be a slight scaling back for some players, but we're not going to go back to where we were before. And if we go on to one more slide. So I think this kind of sums it up that, you know, there is still uncertainty. I mean, I'm not sure my crystal ball is better than anybody else's. We have no idea when the medical crisis is going to end. But I think it's fair to say that we cannot assume the medical crisis, like I said before, means the end of the crisis for the airlines, because the next few years after the medical crisis is behind us, if we're so fortunate, will still be tough. There will probably be a recessionary environment, and there will be a change in the business model based on changed behaviors of travelers, of companies, of the parties that all feed into the aviation food chain, be them ground handlers or airports or any other party. Everything we know is familiar will have, and assumptions we've always made will probably have to be reconsidered. And that'll lead to change, restructuring for airports, for airlines, for suppliers. We think the most efficient and cost-conscious airlines will survive, but airlines don't have a right to survive. And I think that's one thing we have to consider when we look at some flag carriers and we look at everyone wants a hub, everyone wants a flag carrier. Is that realistic? That's a question that policymakers need to decide upon when there are going to be so many other social priorities in so many countries in terms of unemployment, medical care, all these other things, the impact upon the educational system of people being remote schooled for so long. And governments only have so much money in their pockets, so they're going to have to think carefully about their investment going forward. And then they're also going to think about what that investment will bring, not just in terms of the airline itself, but in terms of the macroeconomic benefit that the carriers provide, be them your home carrier, flag carrier, or facilitating other carriers in your market. So I think there'll need to be a lot of innovation. Cost discipline is more important than ever. And the assumption of change has to be looked at every level. I think there's one more slide, but I just suspect it's just a conclusion slide. Yes, thank you very much. And please ask time for a few more questions. Happy to answer them.
Yeah, super. David, I will stop sharing the screen now, and we will
please
just go back to conversation mode. Thank you. So, David, I have the question for you, and to your personal opinion. For instance, these different regulations that are being active right now in Europe and beyond, in Ukraine, in other countries, is that like the ticking mine for the aviation industry? Because you can't actually organize all the travels between different regulations. And this is actually the reason why countries are creating their own safety bubble, building up the walls, and they're safe of organizing the travels inside a safety bubble. But when it comes to international travels, we see the huge drop down of the traffic. Do you think that it should be somehow decided on a broad level, that it should be one safety standard, safety C system, control C system for all aviation?
In theory, yes, but I look at this a little bit like, I remember some of us were in the industry back after 9/11, and fear and the fear of making a mistake drives the political equation. First, we all got to wash our hands, and washing our hands is still obviously important, but now there's a question, maybe it's all airborne. And as long as people don't know, there's a certain amount of assumption of what could be the worst case scenario. And you see that just this week with the UK, some would say probably overreacting a bit. Instead of closing down flights from a targeted area, let's say Catalonia, for example, they simply shut down all of Spain. And that, while that is probably, quote, the safer option, because no travel was the safest option if you look at it from a minister's point of view, but I think the Spanish prime minister had a very clear statement that, he's not sure certain parts of Spain are actually that, worse off than certain parts of the UK. You can't look at things at the holistic level. You multiply that times the many, many countries in the EU or the European aviation area. It would be nice if there was an international standard, but I think in the short term, it'll take time to develop. And then the question is, who is the party that controls it? Is it EASA, the safety agency, who actually regulates traditional aviation safety in terms of flight worthiness, airworthiness, and so on? Or is it the EU, which is still very politically driven? Or is it, who, do we follow WHO guidelines, and are countries willing to, shall we say, take a back seat to global parties that don't have formal legal power? And it's clear that there's a misalignment of views and interests throughout Europe. So it's hard to see that even looking inside Europe, let alone in neighboring countries or across the globe, whether it's in Asia or North America or elsewhere. I think it's going to be a while before a more standardized solution occurs, even if it would be probably better in the long run.
Thank you. David, is it possible for the airline of whatever type of the airline to overcome this crisis without a financial help from the government? Well, maybe to utilize their own resources in some very, well, unexpected way. What do you think? Or it should be supported by the government?
Well, the problem is not, there are some airlines that will survive without government help, but the problem is their potential to survive, the potential to get through the crisis is damaged every time one of their competitors is given a big check. So it's a question, okay, if we are going to give money to the big flag carriers, should we be giving money to everybody and decide that aviation is a vital industry? Why is one type of airline more likely to get money than another type of airline? Because of previous strategic decisions, or because they have a greater history behind them? I'm not, the issue is, like I said, is not that we know the states are going to reach into their pocket. Nobody wants to be left without any aviation connections. The question is, can you do it in a manner that shows some benefit to all parties in the industry? I mean, you take APD tax in the UK, or those type of taxation. That's a taxation that hits the whole industry. Should we be continuing those taxes right now? And that's a question. If you want to facilitate the aviation sector, there are ways to do it that are a bit more even-handed, recognizing that different models don't have a more inherent right to exist than other models.
David, right now we actually are witnessing a huge wave from bankruptcies, and as our experts confirm, more to come. Yeah. So do you think that right now it is the right time to set up the new airline? And if you think yes, so what should be your not to do list?
Well, I don't know if you're looking for investors, but I only don't have much in my pocket right now, but we'll try, but I think it probably isn't today, because the market hasn't rationalized, but I think you need to be ready to go. Certainly we see this in Australia, where one of the two national airlines collapsed. And there are some other potential investors circling on the market right now, waiting to look and saying, is this the right time to jump into the market in Australia? And that won't be the only case globally. I think there will be other parties. It's a bit of what you say in English, catching a falling knife. We're trying to find the right moment to jump in to get in the market. I think the advice I give to anybody, whether they're going to start tomorrow or in 6 months or in a year, is don't simply drive by looking in the rear view mirror. You need to look forward. You need to look at what has changed, and what's not just changed temporarily, but what has fundamentally changed, not just in the airline, in consumer behavior, and make sure your business model stands up in that future world, whatever it is, because an airline that might have been successful last year won't necessarily be successful in 2 or 3 years, even if there is a recovery. It's gonna change people's habits. It's gonna change a number of things.
Okay, clear. Thank you, David.
And I think Enzo's thing, which I think is correct, which is no matter what, and I think Enzo is correct, and I come from an LCC background, so I completely agree, cost is king. Cost will always be king. The moment you start saying, oh yeah, but we can afford this, and oh yeah, but we can afford that, it's the long slip.
Okay. Thank you, David, for a really very interesting insight from your side. It was really a pleasure to have you.
Okay,
greetings
thank you.
from Enzo. So hope to see you soon. And stay safe.
Okay, well, thank you all, and thank you for listening, and we'll see what happens. Good luck to everybody, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
luck. Bye. Bye. Сейчас мы продолжим, и я бы хотел вам представить украинский форум, который будет проходить 8-9 октября в Киеве. И буквально пару слов о том, что это за событие и что вы увидите, находясь на этом форуме и если будете его гостями. Цель нашего мероприятия, которое будет проводиться в Киеве, это предоставить площадку для участников авиационной индустрии для того, чтобы они могли обменяться своими знаниями, по крайней мере, увидеть друг друга лично, что очень актуально в последнее время. И отличная площадка для того, чтобы завести новые знакомства и для того, чтобы понять, что ожидает авиационную отрасль. Поэтому те, кто заинтересован в этом мероприятии, мы вас всех ждем, мы вас приглашаем. Кто будет участвовать? Будут участвовать компании, безусловно, украинские компании, которые работают в сфере авиационной индустрии. Это авиакомпании, аэропорты, наземные службы, туроператоры, также производители самолетов. Естественно, этот форум, он не только ориентирован на украинский рынок, это будет форум, который ориентирован на иностранных посетителей и гостей. Основные тематики, которые мы планируем озвучить и раскрыть на этом форуме, это экономика авиакомпаний. Какие бизнес-модели эффективны, какие нет. Я думаю, это очень важный момент, который будет интересен. Также очень интересная тематика, очень актуальная, это уменьшение расходов на техническое обслуживание самолетов при низком проценте эксплуатации. И также третий блок – это персонал, сокращение персонала, набор нового персонала, все, что с этим связано. Мероприятие будет длиться 2 дня, и оно будет 8 и 9 октября. 8 октября будет вечеринка, на которой можем всем познакомиться, и 9 октября будет сам форум, на котором будут раскрыты все эти темы нашими спикерами. А сейчас я хочу предоставить слово организатору этого форума Алексею Кравченко.
Так, ребят, всем привет. Как меня слышно, как меня видно?
Слышно вас очень хорошо, Алексей.
Прекрасно. Видно ли меня, скажите, пожалуйста?
Да, видно.
Хорошо, ребята, всем огромное спасибо, что вы были с нами на нашем бесплатном онлайн-марафоне, посвященном такой важной теме, как авиация в период коронакризиса. Прекрасные спикеры, прекрасные вопросы и прекрасное начало большого развития в этом направлении. Я представлюсь в 2 словах. Зовут меня Алексей Кравченко, я являюсь соорганизатором форума, о котором рассказал Андрей. И мы занимаемся непосредственно тем, что организовываем присутствие в диджитал-сфере, в онлайн-пространстве непосредственно этого мероприятия. То есть наша компания занимается тем, что закрывает вопросы, связанные с диджитал-маркетингом и со всеми вопросами, связанными с продажей билетов на данный форум. Конечно же, мы планировали его провести еще в апреле месяце, но в связи с коронавирусом и карантинными мерами нам пришлось переносить его на октябрь. Мы надеемся, что в октябре уже мы сможем собрать всех офлайн в гостинице «Континенталь». И в 2 словах я сегодня расскажу вам о том, какие существуют цены, какие преимущества, что получит каждый из участников, который посетит наш форум. Итак, первое, важно понимать, что 8 октября на 17:00 у нас будет Welcome Drink Party. Это пати предназначено для того, чтобы мы могли познакомиться друг с другом поближе, и также у нас будут гости. Будут гости из Министерства инфраструктуры Украины, будут гости из Транспортного комитета парламента Украины, будет им предоставлено поздравительные вступительные слова, да, Государственная авиационная служба Украины будет приглашена и региональные авиационные менеджеры. В целом с 17 до 22 это такая свободная атмосфера, обстановка, где мы познакомимся поближе друг с другом, сможем обменяться визитками, найти партнеров каких-то предварительно, да, договориться о каких-то проектах, возможно, найти проекты для инвестирования. Поэтому я настоятельно рекомендую посетить именно 2 дня. Это 8 октября на 17:00 и до 22:00. Welcome Drink Party. Так, если Андрей поможет мне переключать слайды, потому что я почему-то не могу. Что касается... Перелистнули, по-моему, там был слайд еще относительно самого... Что касается, да, теперь 9 октября, давайте так, 9 октября, да, что мы ожидаем? Мы ожидаем 300 авиационных профессионалов. Это вопросы, которые будут рассматриваться по тендерным направлениям. Это, конечно же, новые контакты, новое партнерство, новое знакомство. Плюс 15 стран – это география нашего форума. Продолжительность, мы уже сказали, 2 дня, плюс 20 спикеров выступлений. Синхронный перевод с английского. Если в данном случае у нас конференция была полностью на английском языке, то на форуме уже будет переводчик. И у нас есть наш замечательный телеграм-чат, наше сообщество, в котором вы сейчас можете увидеть ссылку на регистрацию. Я призываю вас оставлять заявки на участие в этом форуме, поскольку само мероприятие подразумевает собой начало большой эпохи. Да. Все прекрасно понимают и знают, что тот, кто в период кризиса, да, с китайского, переводится кризис не только как проблемы, но и возможность. Увидит здесь возможности, тот будет наконец. Потому что отрасль будет развиваться, и, конечно же, сейчас мы находимся, наверное, в самом низу, да, учитывая ту ситуацию, с которой столкнулся весь мир. Поэтому кто, как не мы, люди, которые заинтересованы в развитии сообщества, в развитии авиационной индустрии, поверьте, только в наших руках менять этот мир, менять его к лучшему. Поэтому я, конечно же, настоятельно призываю вас регистрироваться на этот 2-дневный форум. Ссылка уже находится в общем чате в Telegram. Там вы можете увидеть цены, оставить заявки. Я, в свою очередь, расскажу еще более детально и подробно о преимуществах данного форума. Можно следующий слайд. Итак, место проведения – это гостиница Интерконтиненталь, самое сердце столицы. У нас здесь рядышком тоже офис находится. Это шикарный 5-звездочный отель со спа-центром, крытым бассейном. Там будет проходить 2 дня нашего мероприятия. Дальше следующий слайд. Теперь, что касается стоимости участия. Есть стоимость участия стандартная, мы называем это как эконом-класс, да, в самолете. Что сюда входит? Вы обязательно попадаете на Welcome Drink Party. Это та вечеринка нетворкинг, которая начнется 8 октября в 17:00 и будет длиться до 22:00. Далее вы получаете участие в форуме. Сюда входит обед и кофе-брейки. Также входит запись нашего онлайн-марафона, который только что мы с вами провели, посвященный авиации в период коронакризиса, и презентации спикеров. Вы получаете бесплатное участие в нашей авиационной вечеринке, которая состоится уже завтра. Те люди, которые оплатили вечеринку, но не оплатили еще участие в самом форуме, мы даем вам скидку на стоимость участия в вечеринке. 1500 гривен, то есть эта сумма будет отнята от билета участия в форуме, от 350 евро. Далее, вы получите доступ к закрытому авиакомьюнити в нашем телеграм-канале. Здесь постоянно будет этот канал расти, сообщество будет развиваться, наш чат активен. Я вижу, какие в нем участники, какие вопросы задают. Все здорово, я поддерживаю вас делиться своим опытом и своей экспертностью в этом чате. Давайте сделаем его настоящим чатом там, номер 1 в мире по авиационной отрасли, индустрии. Я думаю, это прекрасная возможность присоединиться к этому сообществу. Также мы даем скидки до 20% для корпоративных участников. Чуть более детальнее расскажу на следующих слайдах. И презентации спикеров самого форума. Можно следующий слайд. Да? Есть у нас стоимость VIP-участия. Сюда входит все то, что входит в стандарт, Welcome Drink Party, участие в форуме, обед с VIP-гостями, то есть будет возможность провести время с VIP-гостями, нашими иностранными спикерами, кофе-брейки, места в первом ряду, подарки от спонсоров и партнеров мероприятия. Также вы получаете запись плюс презентацию нашего бесплатного онлайн-марафона по авиации в период коронакризиса и бесплатное участие в Aviation Party, которое состоится уже завтра. Если кто-то еще не знает, пожалуйста, оставляйте заявку на лендинге под форум. Вас обязательно наберут наши менеджеры и расскажут более детально о том мероприятии, которое состоится уже завтра в 19:00 в City Beach Club в Киеве. Мы ожидаем порядка 200 гостей, представителей авиационной индустрии. И для этих людей тоже будет отминусована стоимость участия в авиационной вечеринке. Доступ к закрытому авиакомьюнити в Telegram-чате, скидки до 20% для корпоративных участников и презентации спикеров форума. Ну и последний слайд, это что касается корпоративных участников. Есть скидки 5%, если вы берете 2 билета и так далее. 10% 3 билета, 15% 4 и 20% 5 билетов. В целом, это то, что касается участия в самом международном форуме, который состоится 8-9 числа. Поэтому последний слайд. Возможно, у вас есть вопросы, вы их можете задать прямо сейчас в нашем телеграм-канале, в общем чате. Я готов буду на них ответить. Но в целом, если вопросов нет, то, конечно же, призываю регистрироваться. Вот еще наш менеджер проекта Анна сбросила вам информацию по поводу авиационной вечеринки. Приходите, ребята, есть еще возможность завтра сделать оплату до 14:00. Мы обязательно вас включим в списки. Приходите, чтобы повеселиться на нашей авиационной вечеринке, познакомиться с представителями различных направлений бизнеса, связанных с авиаиндустрией. Будут иностранные представители, поэтому всегда рады. Можно ли оплатить частями? Да, коллеги, можно оплатить частями. У нас есть банк-партнер, и это банк Монобанк, поэтому есть возможность сделать оплату частями через Монобанк или же договориться с нашим отделом продаж, мы можем сделать там рассрочку платежам. Но такие условия будут длиться недолго. Все то, о чем я вам сказал, эти цены будут действительно только до 7 августа. С 7 августа мы поднимаем уже на $150, поэтому цены сейчас, которые я вам озвучиваю, они акционные и будут действовать только всего лишь до 7 августа. У меня все очень просто. Deadline, call to action. Да? Поэтому можно частями оплатить, но, пожалуйста, настоятельно рекомендую оставить заявку прямо сейчас, договориться с менеджером, который вас курирует, о рассрочке платежа, потому что после 7 числа уже никакой рассрочки не будет. Бесплатное участие в авиационной вечеринке за минусом стоимости вечеринки. Что это за условия? Смотрите, условие очень простое. Стоимость участия в вечеринке у нас составляет всего лишь 1500 гривен. И эти 1500 гривен будут отниматься от стоимости билета на участие в международном форуме, который состоится в октябре. То есть если стоимость билета 350 евро, мы отнимем оттуда 1500 гривен. Таким образом вы получите некий бонус, подарок от нас. Но опять подчеркну, что эти условия будут действовать только до 7 августа. И эти условия специально являются только для участников данного онлайн-марафона. Других предложений мы пока не делаем никому. То есть нам важно, чтобы комьюнити развивалось, поэтому мы стараемся делать со своей стороны приятные условия, чтобы вы могли участвовать в наших ивентах и мероприятиях. Так, вопрос от Мирослава. Будет трансляция форума онлайн? Да, мы планируем организовать трансляцию, и если будет трансляция, соответственно, у нас будет и видеозапись. По крайней мере, мы всегда стараемся это организовывать. В данном случае и по онлайн-марафону вы тоже получите запись, но подчеркну, что запись платная, 500 гривен, есть ссылка на сайте, где вы можете оплатить, и в этом чате есть возможность сделать оплату, получить и запись, и презентации непосредственно лекторов. Будет трансляция форума онлайн. Планируем, да, вот делать онлайн, уже ответил на этот вопрос, соответственно, и запись будет. Может быть, еще есть вопросы, ребята? Можете ли вы быть только один день? Ну, вообще-то такой вопрос не рассматривали, но я думаю, в индивидуальном порядке, учитывая ситуацию, мы можем это обсудить. Вообще рекомендую быть 2 дня, поскольку первый день это все-таки нетворкинг, и, как показывает практика, основные сделки и контракты заключаются за рюмочкой горячительных напитков, поэтому не упустите этот шанс. Но если у вас есть какие-то нюансы, давайте оставляйте заявку, мы обсудим это в индивидуальном порядке. Хорошо? Еще вопросы, ребята? Я продублирую еще раз ссылочку для регистрации. Пожалуйста, оставляйте заявку. Здесь подтягивает старый баннер. 16-17 апреля планировалось провести форум, но, как я уже сказал, да, в силу коронавируса и кризиса мы перенесли его на октябрь месяц. Есть ли еще вопросы, ребята? Задавайте вопросы, отвечу на все вопросы по участию в форуме. Как меня слышно, как видно? Дайте какую-то обратную связь, поставьте плюсики. Все слышно хорошо, да? Хорошо, коллеги, если нет вопросов, тогда скажу вам огромное спасибо, что были сегодня с нами. Следите за нашими новостями, обязательно подписывайтесь на наши социальные сети, и будет много еще мероприятий от Украинского авиационного форума. Всем вам